At age 8, I used only a fruit knife to save a group of rich young masters abroad. After being escorted back to the country, I accidentally discovered that I am actually the eldest young master of a top-tier wealthy family. On the day of the reunion, there was no scene of hugging and crying bitterly, only receiving a display of intimidation filled with disdain from a lady. You can come home, but don't even dream about bullying your younger brother, just when everyone thought I would be frustrated, and burst into tears. I turned to ask my biological father, is she my stepmother? The stylist who was organizing the clothes almost burst out laughing, luckily covering their mouth just in time. The lady suddenly stood up and shouted in anger, "You brat, what are you saying? How could I be a stepmother?" I used my big dark eyes to look at her and said, "Is that not so if I am your biological son, and you lost me for so many years? Shouldn't you treat me well? Why do you treat an adopted son better than me? I see that my return doesn't seem to make you happy at all." My question made her feel ashamed, with nowhere to hide her face. The lady stood there stunned, looking like an elementary student who just made a mistake, not knowing how to talk back. I then asked my father where my room was. Mu Pingyun dithered, on the second floor, the room by the window. I nodded, turned around and went straight upstairs. During that entire process, I didn't even bother to glance at anyone coming from the border. The strange environment all along. The way kept me instinctively alert. For several days I hadn't closed my eyes. After all the endurance of this 10-year-old body has its limits. Struggling to reach the room, I almost blacked out immediately. When I woke up, it was early the next morning. Just as I walked to the dining room door, I could already hear that young master curling his lip in dissatisfaction. It's already this late. All the friends I made plans with have been calling to rush me. Mom, I don't want to wait for him anymore. Lady Mu doted on his small head. Go ahead and answer the phone first. We'll be heading out right away in a bit. Hearing that, Mu Jingchuan immediately beamed with joy. He skipped away from the dining table, only wishing I would sleep a bit longer for the better. Lady Mu glanced over. Before the little patience left over was also about to run dry. At this moment, seeing me, she let out a cold snort. Sleeping until noon. Making everyone wait for a meal is truly undisciplined. Later, when you meet Jingchuan's classmates, remember to be a bit polite. They are all children of elite families, not like where you came from in the countryside. I sat down and drank a glass of milk first, then calmly spoke up. I'm not going, no need to wait for me. Lady Mu was stunned, I asked without any expression. On the contrary, you guys didn't even ask if I wanted to go or not. Isn't that right? Mu Jingchuan was speechless, angrily pulling Lady Mu's hand to show off. Mom, let's not take him along, and don't buy him nice clothes or a backpack either, so people will laugh at him when school starts. The lady nodded, agreeing with her adopted son's words. She threw down her napkin and left, without those annoying sounds anymore. I ate a bit more naturally. Just as I finished eating and was about to stand up, I saw a young girl about 16 or 17 years old, with hair messy like a bird's nest, walking downstairs. She naturally sat at the table and ordered the nanny to make breakfast. No sandwiches today. Pan fry me a piece of steak, hurry up. I'm starving to death. The butler kindly replied, Yes, eldest miss, please wait a moment. Then he stepped forward, proactively introducing the two siblings to each other. Eldest miss, this is young master Chen Chen. He just returned yesterday. Young master, this is your older sister Mushuran. Mushuran, upon hearing this, didn't even bother to raise an eyebrow. Hey, because of this thing, my parents argued quite a bit, right? Insisting on finding him just to add more trouble. The butler looked at me with an awkward expression. Unexpectedly, as soon as he turned his head, he saw me focusing intensely, staring at the laptop in the hands of Mushuran. The butler leaned in and asked me, Young master, is something wrong? I pointed at the glowing screen, asking directly, where can I buy that? The butler was a bit conflicted. You mean the computer? Since you are still young, and likely haven't interacted with computers before, your room hasn't been set up with one yet. I then reached into my seat, pulled out a nylon bag, took out a stack of cash and handed it to him. Is this enough to buy it, eh? This action made Mushuran, who was looking at the screen, truly shocked. She couldn't help but burst out laughing. If you want this, it's not like I can't give it to you. But do you even know how to use it? I immediately took a step forward, humbly asking for instructions on how to play. Mushuran proactively told me to stand over there. Look closely. These beautiful images you're seeing are actually made up of these characters. For example, like this. While speaking, her fingers typed rapidly on the keyboard. Lines of code like cryptic scriptures scrolled up continuously, making one's eyes go blurry. Finally, she pressed the enter key. A brand new website appeared. Mushuran pushed the screen in front of me, leaning close and whispering a challenge. See simple right. Want to give it a try? This level is something even a fool could understand. If you can't do it, it proves you're too stupid. Don't call me sister anymore. If we meet outside, don't say you know me. Did you hear me clearly? The butler, standing nearby, heard this and couldn't stop wiping his sweat. The eldest miss had a natural talent for tech products since she was young. Thinking about how I just came from the countryside and had probably never even seen a computer before, he felt even more pity for me. Mushuran saw me still staring intently at the screen and gave me a light nudge. What are you dazing off for? Hurry up and do it. I was pushed toward the desk. My height barely reached the edge of the table. Seeing my small head peeking over the computer looked quite hilarious. Sharon saw my fingers touching back and forth, trying out a few keys on the keyboard, then looking up at the screen, looking as if I were trying to recognize each individual letter, which momentarily made her find it ridiculous. She crossed her legs, waiting for me to break down and admit defeat, so she could mock me to satisfy her twisted sense of fun. At first, the speed was still very slow, but once my brain memorized the key positions, my fingers began to glide faster and faster. Mushuran thought I was just typing randomly, but when she saw the lines of code I was writing, the chopsticks in her hand dropped straight to the floor. You did this. She snatched the computer away to find any signs of me cheating. I looked at her with doubt. Weren't you watching me write the whole time? The next second, she turned back to look at me, staring as if looking at a monster, then reached out, grabbed me, and marched straight upstairs. Mushuran sat me down in a gaming chair and simultaneously turned on 4 large monitors around us, extracting all the code from each page. The young girl asked with a serious face, "How much of this do you understand?" I looked at her weirdly. After observing for a moment, I suddenly pointed at the third screen. Isn't this line of characters written wrong? Mushuran's eyes widened as she leaned in to look closely. Wrong. Where exactly? Right here. I slid my finger across. After the touchscreen displayed it, I deleted the old code and wrote a new line myself. Hey, don't just touch things randomly. Mushuran was about to go crazy. She had stayed up for several days and nights for this. With great difficulty, she had reached the decisive moment of the championship battle, and unexpectedly I had ruined it. At this point, she was so angry she wanted to kill someone. She completely forgot that she was the one who told me to look at the code. Just as she was about to jump up and throw a fit, she noticed the screen suddenly glowed brightly, displaying the word win. At the same time, the cheers of her teammates came through the speakers. Mushin, you're freaking legendary. I can't believe you found the loophole that fast. We are the champions. Mushuran heard their excited shouting and slowly turned her head to look at the third screen. Then her eyes grew wider and wider in shock. She scratched her head, feeling like she had just tried to show off in front of a pro. An awkwardness from being exposed as a fraud. You still want to buy a computer? I'll buy it for you. So I didn't hold back and nodded in agreement. Then let's head out now. Mushuran was in an extremely refreshed mood now. Her stride became full of energy. In the car, Mushuran opened a dictionary on her phone, purposely taking it out to challenge me. Unexpectedly, in just a short 10-minute drive, I had finished reading that entire dictionary. Mushuran looked at my small head in amazement. Just how exactly is this head of yours structured? Does our family have such elite genes? This was the first time I had come to such a bustling and prosperous place. Instinctively, I observed every single person. Mushuran thought I was unfamiliar with the place. She proactively held my hand and said, "Don't be afraid. Big sis is here." She had completely forgotten how much she had loathed this younger brother at the start. It's just that I'm not used to physical contact. I tried several times to pull away, but Mushuran was too excited, dragging me straight to the computer district. She waved her hand just like that, generously picking out the highest spec rig in the store. The shop owner was Mushuran's friend. Seeing her leading a child along, he clearly showed his surprise. Eldest Miss Mu is taking her brother shopping. That's a rare sight. But young Master Mu looks much tanner, doesn't he? Mushuran proudly declared, "Drop it. He's not that crybaby." Mu Jingchuan. This is my biological brother, the real deal. Meanwhile, I just stood silently in front of the counter, feeling my collar suddenly being lifted up. For stuff this big, just let them deliver it to the house. After saying that, she lugged me toward the bookstore. Inside the bookstore, she grabbed a few basic programming books and stuffed them into my hands. Use these to build your foundation. The framework you built was way too messy. I held a stack of books which were thicker than bricks. Looking around, I suddenly spotted an acquaintance. That person also happened to look up and saw me immediately, then marched toward me. "Mushin, why are you here? I was planning to visit you in 2 days. Are you living well?" This could be considered my only acquaintance in this city. She had also helped me a lot. I nodded and replied, "I'm currently at the Mew house living very well. Thank you." The girl was also happy for me. She smiled. "That's good then." But Mushuran isn't exactly a good person. You have to be careful not to get bullied by her. I shook my head, but before I could speak, a large hand grabbed and pulled me protectively behind. Mushuran appeared out of nowhere, aggressively stepping forward to grab the girl's collar. "Jia Royao, who did you say was bullying people?" "That's my brother." "Why are you approaching him? Looking for a fight?" Jia Royao was stunned. "You two are together, Mu." Shuran snapped, "Obviously. You think he'd be with you?" Jia Royao was a bit surprised, raised her hands and said it was just a misunderstanding. "Your brother and I both returned from the border region. He helped me a lot, so I just came over to say hello." Jia Royao leaned down to look at the stack of books I was holding. "Do you want to read all of these? Can you even understand them?" I nodded, having heard that this person in front of me had excellent academic grades. So I spoke up and asked, "Can you help me choose a few books?" Xiaoruoyao smiled brightly. She was more than willing to repay me. Immediately after, she handed me several books. Xiaoruoyao was about to reach out and pat my head, but was given a glare by Mushuran, so she could only point toward the high bookshelf and say, "Actually, the fastest way to recognize words is reading children's comics. It's not boring at all. Do you want some?" I had never read comics before. I was a bit curious, so I nodded. Xiaoruoyao spread her arms. "You can't see them on your own. Let me pick you up so you can choose." "Okay." I was just about to agree when my feet suddenly left the ground. Mushuran tucked me under her arm again. She provocatively told Xiaoruoyao, "He's my brother. Don't be so nosy." Xiaoruoyao looked at her actions, frowned slightly, and then smiled helplessly. After finishing choosing the comics, all three of them walked out of the bookstore. Xiaoruoyao then invited me to get ice cream. The sweetness melting in my mouth made my eyes light up. "Moo." Shuran kept staring at my expression, finally looking satisfied. She said smugly, "If you like it that much, we'll buy a whole freezer of ice cream for you to eat your fill." At this moment, through the floor-to-ceiling glass window, I keenly raised my head and locked eyes with a shocked Mu Jingchuan. The kids walking with him saw Mu Jingchuan stop and followed his gaze into the shop, looking where he was staring. "Mu Jingchuan, isn't that your older sister? Why is she taking another kid out for food?" "Yeah, didn't you say? She wasn't free to hang out with you. But now there's another kid next to Mu Shuran." "Mu Jingchuan, didn't you say your sister loves you the most?" "What gives? Let's go in there. Tell her to treat us all to ice cream." Yeah, I'm craving ice cream too." The crowd started chiming in. Mu Jingchuan obviously couldn't sit still anymore. He stared intently at the three people over there, biting his lip and saying, "Fine, let's go in." At the same time, he wanted to see how this country bumpkin managed to get his sister to agree to eat ice cream with him. Without waiting for the staff to greet them, they all ran straight to my table. "Sis." Mu Jingchuan took the lead and stepped forward. He grabbed Mushuran's sleeve coquettishly, speaking in a sugary, sweet voice. "Why did you go out without telling me? We could have gone together. Besides, all my classmates really like you." "That's right, Shuran. Jingchuan said you're a pro gamer. Can you teach us?" "Whoa, you guys ordered so much ice cream. Can we join in?" Mushuran felt like all the chirping was giving her a massive headache. She reached out and brushed him off. "Mu Jingchuan, if you want to eat, go buy it yourself. Don't be a nuisance. It's not like you're broke, so why come here to pester us?" Mu Jingchuan didn't expect his sister to give him zero face like this. Immediately, his small face flushed red. He bit his lip, acting pitiful while saying, "But I just want to be with you." The other kids saw this and were filled with questions, pointing at me and asking, "Then who is he? Why does he get to eat with Shuran? So, is he Ruoyao's younger brother?" Mu Jingchuan panicked a little, fearing they would discover his status as an adopted son. In a moment of desperation, he blurted out, "He's the son of my family's maid." The newly arrived kids suddenly realized. When they looked closely at me again, their eyes were filled with contempt. No wonder he's so dark. His clothes look like total trash too. "Mu Jingchuan, your sister is such a good person, treating even the nanny's son to food. So why not invite us to eat with you too?" In reality, it wasn't that they couldn't afford ice cream. It's just that these rich brats were used to being entitled and could never accept being rejected by others. Plus, with my supposed status being out in the open, it made them feel even more like they couldn't be inferior to someone else. However, before Mu Jingchuan could think of an excuse, over there Mushuran slammed her hand down on the table. Bam! The sound made all the kids jump in fright. She raised her head and barked at Mu Jingchuan. "Who did you just call the nanny's son?" It seems Mu Jingchuan has stayed at the Mu house too long and has forgotten what his true identity is. Hasn't he? She reached out and grabbed Mu Jingchuan, dragging him over and saying in a low voice, "The food you eat, the things you use, even your very name, are all stolen from someone else. What right do you have to be here talking nonsense?" "Sis," Mu Jingchuan had never seen her in such a furious rage before, not to mention being publicly humiliated in front of everyone like this. Tears began to stream down his face. Mushuran pushed him away in disgust, pointed at me, and declared to the group of kids, "You kids listen up. He is the biological brother of me, Mushuran. If I find out anyone bullies him in the future, I will beat every single one of you, understood?" The kids were terrified by her fierce demeanor, shaking like frightened quails. The whole group turned and scattered in all directions, leaving only Mu Jingchuan rubbing his eyes. He could only shoot a glare at me before running off in a huff to find Lady Mu. Xiaoruoyao, sitting opposite us, couldn't help but shake her head. "Honestly, this adopted child of your family really needs to be taught a proper lesson." Mushuran let out a cold snort, but unusually didn't argue back. It wasn't that I didn't hear her. It's just that I didn't care about the petty antics of Mu Jingchuan, because it didn't deal any damage at all. After finishing eating, Mushuran was still hyped and eagerly asked me, "Is there anything else you want? Let's go buy it." I shook my head, wanting to go home and read. Right at that moment, a loud noise echoed from the first floor. Screams rang out everywhere. I immediately looked for cover and crouched down. Mushuran and Xiaoruoyao were also terrified. They instinctively hid behind the glass railing with me. What was that sound just now? I suddenly turned my head and put a finger to my lips, signaling her to be quiet. Then I whispered, "It's a gunshot." Xiaoruoyao and Mushuran were both horrified, looking in the direction I was observing. Sure enough, in the middle of the chaotic third-floor lobby filled with refugees, there was a masked man holding a gun, pointing it everywhere. "Everyone stay still," the man roared. He turned around and frantically smashed the glass of the jewelry counter. "Hand over all the gold." "Hurry up," the staff member got up while trembling. With one hand up, the other hand shook while opening the display, and even had to help him stuff the gold into a bag. "I see something wrong with that guy." Xiaoruoyao had noticed something unusual. She stared at his hand holding the gun and said, "His hand keeps shaking. His posture is wobbly. He's probably drunk. Like this, if the police rush in, it will cause him to take even more extreme actions." And that was exactly the case. Just a few minutes later, a large squad of police arrived at the scene. The man's emotions immediately became agitated. He pressed the gun against the store clerk's head. He screamed, "Did you betray me? Did you—" As soon as he finished speaking before anyone could react, he didn't hesitate to pull the trigger. After a deafening explosion, everyone saw a splatter of blood, but luckily, the man's hand slipped due to the gun's recoil, so he didn't hit the employee's vital spots. The person was only hit in the shoulder and collapsed to the ground, crying out in agony. Even so, the scene was still filled with terrified screams. Among them, the children's crying sounded especially piercing. The man looked in the direction of the sound and saw over 10 children gathered in one place. He immediately stepped over and snatched a child up, pressing the gun against them. "Stop crying, shut up." Those children were Mu Jingchuan's classmates. During that time, Mu Jingchuan was being held tightly by Lady Mu, who just finished her nails hiding behind some fake plants. She's his adoptive mother after all. Mushuran instinctively gasped, gritting her teeth. "How can we be this unlucky?" Right at this moment, I suddenly moved. I ducked low and quickly ran into a store. It was a mountain climbing gear shop. The owner inside was lying flat behind the counter. I quickly identified my targets, grabbing a folding knife and a coil of rope. Then I went past the checkout counter and grabbed a felt tip marker. Xiaoruoyao rushed in and asked me, "What are you doing?" I looked up at her and then at my hands, then handed her the pen. "Go write something." Xiaoruoyao had no idea what I was planning. Seeing I had already walked away, she could only hurry after me to the second-floor lounge area. She was shocked to see me facing the police officers, who were about to force their way in. The two sides stared at each other in silence. Then I spread my arms to stop them from breaking the glass. The people around waiting for rescue were worried but didn't dare to speak up. They could only watch with wide eyes. As soon as Xiaoruoyao arrived, I pulled her over. I pointed at the police outside the glass and said, "Tell them the robber drank alone and injured someone. He's currently holding a child hostage." Xiaoruoyao finally understood the purpose of the marker. She hurried to the glass door, quickly using the pen to write down the robber's info. The police officer rappelling down was stunned and immediately used his radio to consult with superiors. I walked over and pulled on Xiaoruoyao's shirt, raised my head and calmly looked at her. "There's more. He seems to have explosives on him. I saw the fuse, but the color is a bit strange." "What?" Xiaoruoyao and Mushuran were immediately scared into a cold sweat. Mushuran took a few quick steps, crouched down and asked me, "What color was the fuse you saw?" I looked at her. 5 colors. Back at the border, everything I saw was gray or earth-colored. It's likely bought from a simulation game gear shop, which has been very trendy in the community lately. It can be used as a real detonator. Mushuran looked at Xiaoruoyao with a serious expression, nodding at the other. Xiaoruoyao furrowed her brows tightly, immediately writing the info on the glass. "The robbers have explosives on them." At this point, her words couldn't be vague. Otherwise, given their young age, they probably wouldn't be trusted by the police, which would eventually harm more people. The final message caused the police officer opposite to exchange radio messages for a long time. I pulled on Xiaoruoyao's shirt again, my childish voice unusually calm. "Let me go handle it." "What?" Xiaoruoyao and Mushuran were both stunned. Immediately, their reaction was unanimous. "No way. It's too dangerous. Letting a 10-year-old child face robbers. No matter how you thought about it, it was ridiculous." But at this moment, from the first floor, the sound of a child crying rang out again, along with the roar of an impatient man. The atmosphere in the entire shopping mall fell into a state of extreme tension. Xiaoruoyao stepped forward. She hesitated for a moment, then softly asked me, "You're sure you can do it right?" I turned my head to look at her and quietly nodded. Only then did Xiaoruoyao let out a sigh of relief. She let go of Mushuran's hand and instructed me then, "You must be careful." This was the first time someone had said that to me. I looked at Xiaoruoyao one more time. Then I gently grabbed the rope. In just a flash before the two of them could see clearly, I had already zipped down to the first floor. Xiaoruoyao and Mu Shuran quickly leaned over, looking down, but that small figure had long since hidden away. Forget the man holding the gun. Even the people around him, very few of them noticed me. One by one, they all stood with mouths agape in shock, looking toward this direction, not understanding what had just happened. Mu Shuran saw me crouching low, weaving through the crowd. Step by step approaching Lady Mu and Mu Jingchuan, she suddenly gripped Xia Royao's arm tightly and said in a bit of a panic, "Did I make a mistake? He has only just returned." But he understands his parents' personalities very well. His father only cares about money. His mother definitely loves Mu Jingchuan more. As for him, this child is merely a passing interest to them, just someone to bring along for a bit. Is that brother even worth the other person taking such a risk? Xia Royao turned her head back to look at him, not even having told him yet that these aren't relatives, but truly just strangers. But right now, there is only one thing they can do, and that is we must trust him, believe that he can save them from the hands of the reckless criminals. He believes I am not an ordinary child. On the first floor, the boy being held hostage was still crying bitterly to release the fear in his heart. The drunk robber's temple throbbed incessantly. He roared in anger, "Did you hear me? Shut up or I'll kill you right now." Seeing him press the gun directly against the child's head, everyone around couldn't help but gasp in horror. At this moment at the mall entrance, the police officers finally decided to follow the suggestion, splitting up to disguise themselves as civilians blending into the crowd. Witnessing the scene at the jewelry counter, they all gasped in unison, secretly felt lucky they didn't force their way in earlier. There are too many children and civilians here. Even a single death would be a total catastrophe. Importantly, the surrounding architecture is very specific, making it impossible to deploy snipers, which increases the difficulty of neutralizing the criminal. They didn't dare pin their hopes on a strange child, and could only move slowly and quietly through the crowd, trying to get close to the criminal. I moved past the decorative planters, appearing right next to Lady Mu and Mu Jingchuan. Mu Jingchuan was lying in Lady Mu's arms, sobbing quietly. "Why are you?" Lady Mu saw me and her jaw dropped in shock. Immediately after, she fell into a state of hesitation. With just Mu Jingchuan alone, she was already overwhelmed. If another child was added, what was she supposed to do? But I didn't give her a chance to think. Pulling her arm away, my small hand struck decisively, chopping hard at the back of Mu Jingchuan's neck. Though my body is small, my strength is immense. Mu Jingchuan was instantly knocked unconscious. Lady Mu was terrified and about to scream, but I timely covered her mouth. After that, I pointed toward the mall's staircase, nodding her that she could carry Mu Jingchuan and escape through that way. My big eyes stared intently at her. A moment later, her mind strangely calmed down. "Hurry and call the police." She held Mu Jingchuan and crawled toward the passage. "Stay here, there's cover. You won't be discovered." But after crawling halfway, she realized I wasn't following. She instinctively turned her head back, seeing that child still quietly crouching in place, staring at that face and those eyes. For some reason, it made one feel incredibly lonely, as if he never even hoped that someone would take him along. That boy only knew how to stand silently and watch others leave. Lady Mu opened her mouth to speak, silently calling out that name in her heart, but I just shook my head, signaling her to go quickly. "If we go together." Lady Mu desperately wanted to say those words, but looking down at Mu Jingchuan in her arms, the fear of loss once again seized her mind, causing her to finally give me one long deep look, before heartlessly turning her back and leaving. Mu Shuran witnessed the entire scene from the second floor, gritting her teeth tightly, her eyes rimmed with red. She felt both her own incompetence and a deep disgust for her mother's coldness. When her gaze landed on me, it was no longer just superficial excitement, but a sincere worry. From the bottom of her heart, I watched Lady Mu successfully enter the passage. Before looking away, I firmly believe that, in this world, there is no such thing as a free lunch. Mu Shuran just bought me a computer and treated me to delicious ice cream, so I definitely had to repay her. As for the people at the old mall, the grandfather who raised me since childhood once said, "When there are too many bad people, only by doing many good deeds can you make yourself a good person." I didn't want to become like those villagers. I wanted to be a good person. The children couldn't control their emotions and were still crying loudly, significantly distracting the kidnapper. But that also triggered his short-tempered mood. The hand resting on the trigger was tense to the point of veins popping out. The child being strangled began to turn blue in the lips. I knew I couldn't wait any longer, so I quickly blended into the group of children, taking advantage of him turning his head again to look toward the mall entrance. I stepped closer, grabbed the hostage child's legs and pulled down hard. The criminal couldn't react in time and stumbled, falling backward. He loosened his grip, causing the child to fall. "Which little brat is this?" He turned his head in a rage. Without even thinking, he raised the gun and pointed it straight at me. My forehead took a painful hit from the barrel, but I stood perfectly still without flinching. Everyone around was absolutely stunned by this sight, to the point where they seemed to stop breathing, fearing that the man would lose control and fire immediately. An ordinary person facing this kind of threat would have broken down long ago. A misfire could happen at any second. But not only did I not cry, I slowly raised both hands to signal surrender. My eyes were deep and dark. That calm gaze made even the criminal freeze in surprise. Immediately, he felt that he finally found a quiet child who wasn't noisy and with his brain short-circuiting. He didn't hesitate to hoist me up, choosing me as his new hostage. Whether it was Xia Royao's duo upstairs or the police officers lying in ambush, none of them could have predicted this. The police side found it even more absurd, knowing that those instructions were actually written by a 10-year-old child. Who would have thought the battle plan proposed by this kid would actually work? Since things had come to this, they could only cooperate and improvise. After being picked up, I finally got a clear look at the positions of the police officers on site, but their ambush points were too far away. I had to wait for them to close in to take down the enemy completely. For now, I just needed to obediently act as a prop. But just as the police were closing the distance, the phone on the robber suddenly started ringing. The abrupt ringing ripped through the atmosphere, causing everyone's movements to freeze instantly. The man seemed to recognize the caller. His emotions became highly agitated. He threw everything down, pointing the gun at me with one hand. His other hand fished out the phone to answer. "Is that you? Don't break up with me. I don't want to break up. You said you needed 3 kilos, right? I'm getting it ready. Don't just say 3 kilos. Even 5 is fine. I'll come propose today." Along with the man's frantic screaming, the other end of the line hung up. That completely triggered his madness. Suddenly tears streamed down as he wailed miserably. "You're all a bunch of liars." Finishing his words, he raised the muzzle. Right at the moment he was about to pull the trigger, I lunged forward. My movements were lightning fast, my small body flickering like a ghost, as I dashed straight behind his back. A flash of cold light gleamed from my hand, aiming straight for his wrist as I slashed down, without missing a millimeter. A blood-curdling scream rang out as the gun in the man's hand fell to the ground. He collapsed to the floor, twitching uncontrollably. Glancing at the crowd of people rushing in, a flicker of despair crossed his eyes, summoning strength from out of nowhere. He used his remaining hand to grab the gun, turning it to aim directly at his own stomach. Witnessing this scene, the police officers a few meters away turned pale, shouting at the top of their lungs, "Everyone get down!" Those rushing forward all hit the floor, covering their heads. In a situation where it's unclear how powerful the explosives are, the best way to ensure safety is to lie flat, to minimize casualties to the lowest possible level. But in the next second, everyone heard a second, agonizing scream. They instinctively looked toward the source of the sound, and saw the boy kneeling beside the man, holding the folding knife high, trailing a splatter of blood. The man's other wrist was now also drenched in blood, leaving him with no way to take any further action. I ripped open the man's shirt, saw the explosives, and didn't even bother distinguishing real from fake, directly reaching out to tear the fuse off. Then I stood up and kicked the gun far away, silently looking at the dozen or so police officers. They were all stunned by the sequence of my consecutive actions. They looked up in a daze at me holding a knife, with a face splattered with blood. If it weren't for my young age, people would have mistaken me for some kind of cold-blooded kid assassin. It took a long while before they finally reacted, scrambling to their feet one by one. They walked over to handcuff the man, only to find that his tendons had been severed. With absolute precision, they looked toward me once again. At this moment, I was being surrounded by Xia Royao, who had just rushed over, along with Mushuran checking my entire body to see if I was injured anywhere. "Does your neck hurt from being strangled just now? Do you feel dizzy? This won't do. Maybe we should go to the hospital for a checkup. That blow to the head earlier didn't look light at all." I looked at them blankly and whispered, "I'm fine." But no one listened to me. The two of them, one on the left and one on the right, dragged me straight outside. The police officer stepped forward to stop them, then looked at me hesitantly, wanting to speak but holding back. Finally, he asked if the boy could give a statement first. He looked at me with a bit of awkwardness, not knowing how to address me. Right then, Mushuran stepped forward. She snapped at him. "Can't you see the huge bump on his head? We have to go to the hospital first. If there's anything, just come to the Mu house to find me." Mu Bingwen is my father. After saying that, she decisively pulled me away. I was taken to the hospital to have my wounds dressed. The various bruises from being tied up were also treated. Hearing the story of how I bravely fought the robbers, even the nurses couldn't stop praising my courage. When I walked out of the clinic looking adorable, Xia Royao and Mushuran both approached me together, confirming that I was truly fine. The two of them finally breathed a sigh of relief. Xia Royao, who was naturally gentle, couldn't help but speak up to lecture me for the first time. She looked at me with total seriousness. "Don't take risks like that ever again. Leave dangerous matters for adults to handle. You're still just a child, do you understand?" Mushuran also unusually stood on the same side as her. She put on a stern face and said, "If you don't listen, I'll have bodyguards follow and watch you from now on." I intended to say I was capable of protecting myself, But seeing the clear worry in the eyes of the two girls, I suddenly felt a very novel sensation. My heart actually felt a bit warm, so I didn't speak up to argue. Rushed footsteps echoed from the end of the hallway. Mu Bingwen, along with another man, came running in a hurry, seeing the three of us standing in front of the clinic. He immediately grabbed Mushuran's hand anxiously. "You aren't hurt, are you?" Mushuran hated his habit of favoring daughters over sons the most, as if he just wanted to use her to inherit Grandpa's estate. She brushed his hand away and said, "The one who saved people wasn't me. Why are you looking at me reminded like that?" Mu Bingwen finally cast his gaze toward me for the first time, but it wasn't to care about my injuries. Instead, he furrowed his brows and rebuked me. "Who gave you permission to act on your own to save people? Do you have any idea how dangerous that was? I heard you even knocked Xiaochuan unconscious. You have no sense of restraint at all. Don't cause trouble like this again." As soon as he finished, not only Mushuran, but even Xia Royao's expression immediately darkened. Mushuran couldn't hold it in any longer. She stepped forward to shield me and shouted, "Dad!" He was the one who saved Mom and Xiaochuan. The fact that the entire mall didn't blow up is all thanks to him. Even if everyone knelt down to thank him, it wouldn't be too much. What right do you have to scold him? Can't you see the injury on his head? Do you even consider him your son at all? The young girl was both furious and heartbroken, feeling that the entire world was being unfair to me. However, Mu Bingwen, who had just received the appraisal report, didn't have even a shred of guilt or self-awareness, since he wasn't his own biological child anyway, just some fake coming out of nowhere, and was now even registered under the old man's name. It was clearly causing him a massive headache. It would be strange if his attitude wasn't. Terrible. Shuren, don't get involved in this. His voice was incredibly firm. He's used to being a wild animal out there. If we don't discipline him properly, he'll definitely cause a huge disaster later. As he spoke, he was about to rush forward to strike. At that moment, a figure blocked his path to the boy. It was Xia Royao. Xia Royao was famous for being a good kid, excellent grades, perfect character, and always respectful to her elders. This was the first time she had ever done something like this, keeping a cold face toward him the whole time. "Old Mu, let's talk this out slowly." Suddenly, the middle-aged man, who had been silent all this time, placed a hand on Mu Bingwen's shoulder, advising him gently. "The boy just went through a major scare. If you want to lecture him, you can do it later. If you truly find him an eyesore, how about letting him stay at my place for a few days? I feel like I share a certain destiny with this child." Ya Royao, standing nearby, heard this and her eyes lit up as she looked at her dad. "I was also planning to invite Chen Chen over to our house. Why not let him come over to recover from his injuries?" The middle-aged man, who was also Xia Royao's father, Xia Qingyuan, kept his trademark smile on his lips. He nodded and said, "Royao, it just so happens your mother always wanted a son. Having him over at our place for a few days would be good." Both father and daughter had a very good impression of me, welcoming me with a strangely warm hospitality, normally given the business relationship between the Xia family and the Mu family. Mu Bingwen should have felt delighted, but now he showed a bit of hesitation. The smile on his lips stiffened as he refused. "No need to trouble President Xia further. This child is very mischievous. Just letting him recover at home is enough." The old master will pick him up soon. I wasn't a biological child of the Mu family. Logically, he should have kicked me out immediately. But he didn't know how to explain it to the old master. Right now, he also didn't have time to go find his biological son. So, I had to stay and continue posing as the young master of the Mu family. Based on that, he absolutely couldn't let me be swayed by another family, which might leak the secret of my background. His attitude was firm, leaving Miss Xia with no other choice. Before leaving, Xia Royao gave me her contact information, saying if I needed anything, just find her. I nodded and tucked the piece of paper into my pocket. I always cherished the kindness of others. Since Mu Jingchuan was still at the hospital for tests, in the end only Mu Shuran took me home. The two of us had just finished bathing when the police arrived at the door to take a statement. Moreover, quite a few people had shown up. Inside the Mu family living room, besides the captain and the recorder, there were over 10 officers crowded together, looking a bit cramped standing in one spot. Opposite them on the sofa, Mu Shuran slightly knitted her brows. "Is taking a statement really worth this many people? If I didn't know better, I'd think you guys were here to arrest a criminal." Captain Lu Zheng rubbed his nose, feeling embarrassed by his unrefined subordinates. He gave a forced smile and said, "It's mainly thanks to young Master Mu's help. He's considered their lifesaver. So everyone wanted to come and say thanks." Seeing the captain making excuses for them, the men behind stepped forward in a hurry, bowing one by one to thank me. I sat quietly on the sofa, hand still holding the ice cream box that was just delivered, watching the ice cream slowly melt. I glanced to see how many people were left to thank me. My short legs, which didn't reach the floor, swayed gently, feeling a bit impatient inside. And every single person who had witnessed the chaos at the mall was secretly observing me. When they saw that I couldn't wait any longer and picked up the small spoon to scoop some ice cream, their expressions were all incredibly complicated. If the mall didn't have security cameras, they absolutely would not have believed that the child before them was the one who rushed into the climbing area to grab rope and a knife and calmly stop the police from breaking the glass, approaching the criminal all by himself, bravely using his head to block the muzzle. Lu Jianga was also very astonished, but having weathered many storms after promptly reminding the team members of their positions, he spoke up to ask when the gunshot rang out, "Were the two of you together at that time?" Mushuran nodded. "Yes, we had just finished our ice cream and stepped out of the shop. So what was your first reaction?" "Obviously to find a place to hide," Mushuran said as if it were common sense. Lu Jiang wore a smile on his lips, but his eyes were full of scrutiny. When an ordinary person hears a loud noise, their first reaction should be to find out where the sound came from, not to immediately look for a place to hide, right? Or to put it another way, you recognize that it was a gunshot from the very beginning. Mushuran blanked out, thinking it over carefully. It really did make sense. Moreover, at that time, the first one to dodge actually wasn't her, but me. However, she instinctively felt that this would bring trouble to me. So she furrowed her brows in annoyance. "What's your point? Are you suggesting we're in cahoots with those robbers?" "Don't misunderstand. We're just questioning you according to standard procedure." Lu Jiang had solved cases for years. He could tell at a glance that the young girl was dodging the issue. He wasn't in a hurry, merely smiling slightly, intending to question her step by step. At this moment, I, who had been silently eating ice cream, suddenly spoke up. I heard it clearly. It was a gunshot. The entire living room fell deathly silent in an instant. Everyone's eyes immediately locked onto me. Lu Jiang narrowed his eyes, looking at the child who appeared incredibly calm on the opposite side. "So you're saying you've heard gunshots before? Where was it?" I licked the ice cream from the corner of my mouth and replied, "At the border." Only then did Lu Jiang remember that in my information file, there was a record of me being kidnapped to the border. Those bandits did indeed carry guns, but he wasn't sure if they had ever opened fire or not, because before being captured, every single one of them perished in a sea of fire. Your reactions are very sharp. He closed the file, naturally striking up a conversation with me. His tone was both friendly and natural. "So why did you think of getting the rope to save everyone? The opponent had both a gun and explosives. Weren't you scared?" Mushuran, standing nearby, faintly felt something was off. She hated his leading style of questioning even more. Just as she was about to intervene, she heard the child beside her give a clear answer. "Scared," I nodded, seriously confessing my own fear of death. Then continued, "But if I didn't do it, more people would have been hurt. I promised the old master that I'd become a good person who helps others." My voice still had a childish ring to it, but the words coming out stunned everyone present. On the spot, Lu Jiang, with his years of experience, could confirm that the child before him wasn't lying. Furthermore, he said those words with such sincerity, struck by those large, round, dark eyes full of unwavering determination. The subsequent questions could no longer continue. Mushuran was also a bit moved, her hand unconsciously stroking my small head. As she asked, "Who is this old master?" I glanced at her, seemingly not knowing how to explain. In the end, I could only say vaguely that he was the one who raised me. "I'm an orphan. The old master picked me up and gave me food, but I don't know his name." "Mu." Sharan saw the flicker of longing in my eyes and her heart suddenly softened. She comforted me, saying if I missed him, we could bring him back here. With the Mu family's wealth, supporting one more old man would be easy. But I still shook my head, looking down at the melting ice cream in my hand, whispering, "No need, he's dead." At the border, under the criminals' guns, I used the 50 RMB from my lookout pay to buy wooden planks to bury him on the mountain. That was the second time I acted as the village lookout. At the mountain, passed behind the village, helping them block the pursuit of 3 police cars. Even though the villagers with me snatched most of the money, the remaining 50 RMB was handed to me directly by those men. "This kid looks sharp. A real natural, just a bit too small." The man smoking in the driver's seat smirked at me, but from the back of the truck, blood kept leaking out, giving off an intense foul stench. Word was they were transporting zombie meat. The profits were insane, but people who ate it would get sick or even die. I just wanted to bury the old man. I didn't want to follow them. Seeing me, the man stepped back warily. A fierce grin appeared on his face. "Being born in a place like this, your fate was sealed a long time ago. Once a lookout, always a lookout. You're no different from us, get it?" But I didn't want to accept that fate. I didn't want to be a bad guy. So afterward, I redrew the map of their escape route and handed it over to the police. I told them there was a gap at the border where they could launch an ambush. From then on, finally, that tainted meat couldn't flood into the city anymore. Those people were also arrested. Once, while accidentally passing by the guard post, I saw 3 pictures posted there. It seemed they were written for me. I copied the things on the pictures, then went back to ask others. Only then did I know those two words meant thank you. Looking at those pictures, I figured I could probably be considered a good person. Mushuran was stunned, nearly moved to tears by my casual remark about death. 1216 Mushuran turned and glared at Liu Zheng. Mushuran turned around and glared at Liu Zheng, blaming him for bringing up the child's sad past. Liu Zheng also felt very guilty, especially since the files showed I was already 10 years old. Yet the boy before him was so thin and frail. It was obvious at a glance that he had endured plenty of hardships, being able to live through such a tough life, while still maintaining a heart of gold, and bravely saving others. Even if his methods were a bit heavy-handed, it was something that could be overlooked. In short, in the end, he didn't have the heart to question me any further. Leading a group of subordinates, he thanked me once more at the front door, then hurriedly left. The scene shifts to the school. Suddenly, after speaking, he left in a huff. Some kids still wanted to introduce Ultraman to me. They tugged at my arm a few times, before realizing I was still standing there motionless. "Where is the teacher's office?" I suddenly asked. During lunch hour, the school building quickly became quiet. Only a few scattered students were walking slowly, but no one was heading toward the stairs. The office was located right in the middle of the hallway. When I saw the room sign, I realized it was very quiet inside. It didn't look like anyone was in there. I looked up toward the window again. The curtains had also been drawn, but clearly Ruan Jingcheng had headed in this direction. Instinctively, I didn't knock but went to the next room, grabbed a chair, and stood on it right under the window to look inside. Through a small gap in the curtains, shadowy figures appeared in the dimly lit room. The outfit Xu Niangxi wore this morning had been taken off. Her white shirt was covered in chalk dust. At this moment, she was also unbuttoning that white shirt. I thought she just wanted to change her dirty clothes. But when I looked over at Ruan Jingcheng standing in front of the desk, I suddenly felt a bit uneasy. In my memory, those who didn't dress properly and were seen by the village aunties were all scolded as hooligans. Moreover, Ruan Jingcheng wasn't the only one in the office. There were several other male students as well. They all stood there with their heads bowed in silence. I thought for a moment, jumped off the chair and went to knock. Knock, knock, knock. The sudden sound echoed through the quiet hallway. A moment later, the office door abruptly opened, revealing Xu Niangxi's face. Seeing me, she was slightly stunned, then quickly flashed her trademark smile. "Moo, is something the matter?" I saw that her shirt buttons were done up wrong, and only one side of her shirt was tucked in. So I looked past her into the room and said, "I'm waiting for Jingcheng." Jingcheng, oh, Xu Niangxi was a bit surprised. She leaned over to block my view, explaining that Jingcheng's grades weren't good, and he needed extra tutoring, so he couldn't leave school with me. "If you're hungry, go eat first, be a good boy." As she spoke, she reached out to pat my head. I wrinkled my nose and immediately dodged. The old man said, "You should go wash your hands." Hearing that, Xu Niangxi suddenly froze, and even her smile became forced, like a cold face, trying to wear a smiling mask. She looked down at me and asked, "Why?" I thought for a bit, not knowing how to explain it. It's just that I've always been very sensitive to scents, so I could only say it was basically very smelly. The smile on Xu Niangxi's face was about to crumble, but since she didn't want to waste too much time, she just went along with it. "Fine, I'll go wash them now. You go eat first." After saying that, she brushed past me and headed to the restroom, not even bothering to think about closing the door. After all, normal elementary school students are terrified of having to go into the teacher's office, but no matter how much she calculated, she didn't expect that I was not a normal child. The moment Xu Niangxi entered the restroom, the very next second I slipped right into the office. I walked up to Ruan Jingcheng and asked, "Are you really getting tutored, or are you being a snitch?" Hearing this, Ruan Jingcheng didn't say a word. He only shook his head. I noticed his body was trembling slightly. I asked suspiciously, "Are you scared? Is there something here?" What's there to be afraid of in a teacher's office? But Ruan Jingcheng and the other boys were as still as statues. No matter how I asked, they refused to open their mouths. I frowned and scanned the room, only seeing a mobile phone placed on the desk. Feeling the atmosphere here was very strange and suffocating, I worried Xu Niangxi would return and keep them here again. So I grabbed Ruan Jingcheng's hand, turned around and walked straight out. Ruan Jingcheng let out a small cry of surprise. He didn't expect my strength to be so great. In just a few seconds, he was pulled to the office door. Not hearing any footsteps behind me, I turned back to the group of boys inside and said, "If you guys don't leave, I'll tell everyone you're being snitches. Everyone will hate you. Just watch." Kids this age fear isolation the most, especially when they are already very introverted and don't fit in easily with the group. They all ran out in fear. By the time Xu Niangxi finished washing her hands and returned, she found the office completely empty. She frustratedly ruffled her hair, gritting her teeth, while staring at the ring and the steel balls on the desk. These were all things she had painstakingly prepared. Right at that moment, a teacher with a stomachache ran back to look for medicine, catching him still there, and even asked caringly is Teacher Sue still tutoring students? Oh, that's truly dedicated. Junianixi swept everything on the desk aside and smiled while coming over to help. They're all the future buds of our nation. I'll help whoever I can. After that, teacher found the medicine and took 2 pills. They continued to praise him. In this day and age, someone with your teaching ethics is quite rare. I happen to have lunch plans with the principal. Why don't you come along? Show your face a bit more to make a good impression. Junianixi was happy to hear about this opportunity and agreed, just as he was about to turn around to pack up his things. That teacher hurriedly pulled him away. Quick, quick. Come on, we can't keep the principal waiting. As soon as Ruan Jingcheng reached downstairs, he tried to pull his hand away. I can't, I shouldn't run. The teacher will be angry. The boy hung his head, tears falling nonstop, looking utterly terrified. I didn't quite understand it, but seeing him crying like there's no tomorrow, it was clear we couldn't go eat lunch. I had to stand by the roadside and call Xia Royao. Half an hour later, Xia Royao rushed over. I was sitting on a long bench, while Ruan Jingcheng had his head on my lap, fast asleep. What happened here? She stepped forward first, squatting down beside Ruan Jingcheng, then looked at me. I pointed at his eyes and said he cried until he was exhausted and fell asleep. Xia Royao saw those swollen eyes, puffy like walnuts. Feeling a bit helpless, she picked Ruan Jingcheng up, then looked toward the closed cafeteria. She said to me, "You haven't eaten anything yet, right? Are you hungry? Let me take you out to grab something." Because she had rushed here so quickly. Truth was, she hadn't eaten either and I was starving. But right now, I still had things to do. So I shook my head and looked at Xia Royao. I asked, "Do you have a computer?" Xia Royao was stunned and replied with a bit of confusion. "I do. Do you want to use it? I want to use it right now." I stood up, without saying a word, and walked straight out. Xia Royao could only carry the child and hurry after me. She drove over. There was a spare laptop in the car. Since I had used a laptop at the computer center last time, I immediately hit the power button. Then I casually unplugged the data cable he was using to charge, and took a phone out of my pocket. To connect it, Xia Royao had just settled into her seat. Ruan Jingcheng turned his head, saw this, and couldn't help but ask curiously, "Whose phone is this?" I didn't even look up. The teacher's. It's a good thing Xia Royao wasn't drinking water. Otherwise, she would have sprayed the entire windshield. The corner of her mouth twitched. As she asked, "What are you doing with this old model phone?" She almost used the word stolen, because this whole thing was just too bizarre. I ignored her conflicted expression, just quickly connected the data, while researching how to crack the password, and explained. A police officer once told me that bad guys usually hide their secrets in their phones. Doing this allows me to watch them anytime. It's more reassuring. Hearing my description, Xia Royao frowned slightly, feeling a bit worried. "Do you think that person is bad?" "I don't know," I said, shaking my small head, but the movements of my hands didn't stop. For even a succinct sentence in my philosophy, if there's a doubt, it must be verified, to see if they are actually a villain or not. Once I find the evidence, it'll be clear. If it were before, Xia Royao would have felt that this guilty until proven innocent logic was ridiculous, like making up stories to slander others. But not only had I saved her life, I had also proven my abilities time and time again. The current Xia Royao was just like Mu Shuran. Both had developed a sense of blind faith in me, so she didn't mention anything about returning the phone anymore, but instead asked with concern, "Can you decrypt it?" The words were barely out of her mouth when lines of code started rolling across the screen. Xia Royao's jaw dropped in shock. 3 seconds later, a ding was heard, and the phone automatically unlocked, the screen lighting up. I've only started using a smartphone recently, so I wasn't very familiar with it. As soon as I tapped it open, I accidentally hit the camera. Seeing my own face appear on the phone, I was a bit dazed. Xia Royao leaned in closer, intending to smile and teach me how to use it. But her gaze suddenly turned razor sharp. She instinctively covered my eyes. "The things that follow aren't suitable for you to see. Can you give the phone to me?" Her voice dropped cold as a block of ice. Rarely had I seen her this furious. After hesitating for 2 seconds, I nodded and placed the phone in her hand. After all, this matter was about Ruan Jingcheng, so letting Xia Royao handle it was only natural. For the next 10 minutes or so, Xia Royao sat in the driver's seat scrolling through the phone. Once finished, she stepped out of the car alone. When she returned, her hand was scraped and still bleeding. I've seen many people who hurt others when they are angry. After hesitating a moment, I spoke up. "How about you go pick up Teacher Sue?" Xia Royao was stunned by what she heard. Then she burst into a laugh. She casually wiped her hand with a tissue and reached out to ruffle my hair. The cold, killing intent in her eyes faded, revealing a glimpse of her original warm self. "Thank you, Mu Chen. Seriously, thank you so much." She solemnly offered her thanks, her attitude incredibly serious and sincere. I guessed that Ruan Jingcheng had likely encountered something terrible. I looked down at the sleeping boy and asked softly, "Is he not going to school this afternoon?" "He's not," Xia Royao said, her face full of bitterness. I have to take him to the hospital. I nodded and didn't ask further. Before I got out of the car, Xiao Royale was still uneasy and consulted with me. How about you don't go to school today either? Wait 2 more days until I handle everything, then go. I turned my head to look at her, remembered something and shook my head in refusal. There's PE this afternoon. The teacher said we'll have a test. Xiao Royale felt a bit helpless, intending to say these elementary school tests don't really matter whether you take them or not. But in the next second, she heard my childish voice again, a voice that was strangely calm, even though Ruan Jingcheng isn't here. If Teacher Su is a bad person, then the other students will also be in danger. Xiao Royale froze. She looked down beside the car, at the small child who wasn't even as tall as the car door. The determination on my face moved her, and the darkness in the depths of her heart gradually faded. Even her intention to personally punish that scum was completely suppressed by my clear gaze. Finally, she let out a soft sigh and replied, "Okay, but you must be careful. I'll settle things and come back as soon as possible. If you're in danger, absolutely do not be impulsive." I nodded. I knew she was worried about me. The lunch break passed quickly, and the students returned to class one by one. Ruan Jingcheng requesting leave didn't cause the slightest bit of attention. Only I kept staring at his seat until PE class started. When everyone went out to the field for outdoor activities, the start of term running test was 400 meters. After finishing, most students were panting heavily. Some couldn't even catch their breath and were helped to the side to rest. I, however, didn't feel anything at all. Didn't even break a sweat. It was as if I had only just warmed up. All right. The remaining time is for free activity. Find a place to rest yourselves. The PE teacher, seeing that everyone was too exhausted to move, had to blow the whistle to dismiss the class. "Muchen, let's play card flipping. We brought a lot of them. We can play with you." I looked at the stacks of cards in their hands. I didn't understand where the fun in that was, but I still replied seriously. "Wait until next time when I have some, then I'll play with you." These things probably had to be bought with money. I couldn't just play for free using someone else's. Next time when I have my own playing together, we'll be fair. My friends looked a bit disappointed hearing that. Right at that moment, cheers erupted under another tree's shade. Turns out Mu Jingchuan was unboxing cards. "Whoa! Your pile is full of rare cards. Mu Jingchuan, you're so cool." Amidst everyone's flattery, Mu Jingchuan raised his small face. He looked at me provocatively. "If you guys play with him, I won't let you see these anymore. Go ahead and pick a card." The elementary students obsessed with card unboxing immediately felt threatened. After a few seconds of hesitation, those friends abandoned me and flew over to Mu Jingchuan's side. Seeing this, I actually felt relieved, because compared to cards, I was more interested in basketball. Back in the village, there was a basketball. Xiaoban's parents bought it from the city for him, but they never allowed me to touch it. I walked over to the ball rack and picked one up. The buff PE teacher resting nearby smiled and said, "What's up? Want to learn basketball? If you want to learn, I'll teach you how to shoot. Playing basketball can even help you grow taller." That last sentence successfully made my eyes light up. I stared at the PE teacher, who was at least 190 centimeters tall. I asked sincerely, "If I learn it, can I become as tall as you?" The PE teacher froze for a moment, then burst into laughter. Haha, he found the kid in front of him quite interesting. Although the chance of growing as tall as him wasn't high, he could definitely catch up to his classmates. And so in the late afternoon, while other students were dodging the sun, to play games only, I didn't fear the heat. Alone, I held the ball and practiced shooting. At first, I couldn't even throw straight because short arms and short legs made it hard to control a standard basketball. Occasionally, a few students saw my awkward posture and burst out laughing, or pointed and gossiped, mocking me for being so clumsy. Mu Jingchuan also saw me running my heart out alone. He curled his lip and muttered, "Whatever. He actually looks pretty pitiful. If he wants to join our game too, just let him come over." He acted all merciful, thinking that since the money on my card would eventually be his anyway, treating me a bit better wouldn't hurt. But I had absolutely no intention of giving up on basketball. If the shot was bad, I started over from the beginning. If I didn't understand, I'd ponder the teacher's instructions. Suddenly looking up, a basketball was seen soaring through the air, landing a perfect bullseye right in the hoop. The area suddenly fell deathly silent. The little kids thought they were seeing things. But right after that, they saw me lean over, pick up another ball, stand at the three-point line, and casually sink another perfect shot. The PE teacher went from an indifferent attitude to standing right beside me to help fetch the ball. He looked at me like he'd found a hidden treasure, watching while nodding nonstop in praise. "You're definitely going to be a top-tier athlete later. I saw that your running earlier was also very effortless." But this time I didn't care because I just wanted to grow taller. Hearing that, I rubbed my nose, not having the heart to tell him that I just took a random shot earlier. Playing basketball doesn't even guarantee getting taller. After that, the crowd of classmates watching grew larger. Every time I sank a basket, it drew loud cheers, even more exciting than watching card unboxings. This is way too OP. Not just three-pointers. Even three-step layups had a success rate of 100%. I told you he was the GOAT. No wonder he's not into card unboxing. He's even cooler than a rare card. Children's worship of the strong is much more direct than adults. In the blink of an eye, the pile of cards under the tree was scattered all over the ground. Everyone ran over to cheer and be my hype squad. It was so hard to bring that stack of cards along for Mu Jingchuan, who wanted to show off, only to be completely overshadowed by me once again. He was so tilted he started ripping grass out of the ground. However, the weather was way too hot. The PE teacher feared I'd get heat stroke, so he didn't dare let me practice for too long. He took the ball back with 10 minutes left before school ended. I was sweating and a bit thirsty, so I ran to the sink to quickly splash my face, then went to the water fountain nearby to get a drink. I was halfway through my drink when several people walked out. It was Xu Niangxi. Behind him, he was leading several young boys. I immediately recognized them as the kids from the extra class. Recalling Xiao Ruyao's furious expression, after she checked the phone, I immediately set down my paper cup and secretly followed them. Inside the small grove, it was the middle of summer, and the foliage was very thick. I had to get closer, before I could spot their silhouettes. Xu Niangxi was pulling at the boys' clothes. This action made me frown immediately. It felt very wrong, even if I had never gone to school before. I knew that for boys it's the same. Your body is something private and sensitive, and you can't let others just touch you however they want. Speak up. If you tell the truth, I'll let you guys go home. Otherwise, we'll have to stay here and play for a while. The usually gentle voice of Xu Niangxi suddenly became deep and low. Even his laughter had a raspy quality, as grating as the sound of his ring slowly scraping across the boy's knees. His voice rang out, "Now who took my phone?" Turns out he realized his phone was missing, and thought they were the ones who stole it. I hadn't anticipated this, and I felt a bit of regret in my heart. I wanted to step out and admit that I took it, but then I remembered Xia Royao's warning, not to be impulsive. Although Xu Niangxi didn't look very tough, I still chose to hold back for now. But as the interrogation went into deeper detail, the children began to sob. However, these cries not only failed to wake Xu Niangxi's conscience, but even stimulated his excitement. Cry, cry more. That's right, look even more pitiful. It has to be like this. It's truly magnificent. He acted as if possessed, circling the children, a radiant smile suddenly blooming on his face. Then he ordered, "Now take off your jackets." I didn't react at first, until I saw a young boy pulling his shirt down. In that moment, I finally understood what Xu Niangxi was planning to do. The blood in my veins boiled instantly. I remembered one year, a new teacher moved to our village. She was a very beautiful young woman. She came to see me a few times to convince me to go to school, and even braided a beautiful flower wreath for me. She said, "Only knowledge can change one's destiny." I went to school, understood the benefits of education, and that's why I came here. I want to bring knowledge to everyone. The people here won't be bad forever. I had to believe that knowledge could change everything. But before the village could get any better, she went insane. Word was she was violated in the cornfields. Later, when I went to visit her, I caught the villagers walking out of her house. Every single one of them had a satisfied smile on their face. Even though they had no strength left, they made me feel disgusted. She never spoke another word to me. After that, she jumped into the river to end her life. When she died, her belly was very large. They said there was a baby inside, but she didn't want to give birth to it, so she chose suicide. In the end, she died on this very land. The land she gave up her future for to enlighten. And what I remember forever will always be that satisfied smile of those villagers. I didn't expect that at a school as beautiful as a castle. This fairy tale castle. Something so disgusting would happen. In the moment I rushed out, I didn't think at all. Countless blurred images flashed before my eyes, immediately followed by ear-piercing screams. Crying and rapid footsteps came rushing in. Teachers and students nearby were all drawn by the wailing and ran over. As soon as they reached the edge of the grove, they saw a large gash on the back of Xu Niangxi's head, while I stood nearby holding a stone. My face completely expressionless. Only my deep black eyes were staring intently at the person on the ground, looking as if I could deliver another blow at any moment. "Quickly call an ambulance, hurry up!" A teacher was the first to react, hurriedly telling the guard to contact emergency services immediately, while turning around to try and disperse the surrounding crowd of students. "Everyone back to class now, do not gather here. Mr. Lee, hurry and manage the students on your side." Mr. Lee, who was also the PE teacher for class 4-1, finally snapped out of it. He was about to lead the students back, when Mu Jingchuan, standing in the crowd, suddenly screamed, "Did he kill someone? He's a murderer." Oh. A single sentence like a stone stirring 1,000 waves. No matter how terrified everyone felt, this fact seemed already set in stone. The crowd erupted into a new wave of screaming. Students scattered everywhere in panic. Classmates looked at me like I was a monster. Mr. Lee, who had just taught me basketball, shouted loudly to calm everyone down. "Everyone please calm down. The incident hasn't been clearly investigated yet. maybe there's some misunderstanding in this. Everyone don't just make wild guesses. I'm not guessing at all, but Mu Jingchuan, with a face full of indignation, stepped out and loudly criticized. Teacher Su is the kindest and most gentle person. Mu Chen just arrived on his first day and already caused him such an injury. What kind of grudge could there possibly be between them? I think he basically has violent tendencies. That story about saving people at the mall was the same way. It was all just him being impulsive and getting lucky. Everyone has been totally fooled by him. Compared to the homeroom teacher who taught them for a year, clearly an outsider, like me, couldn't win the students' trust. Furthermore, a child only 10 years old, striking that hard, made even the adults nearby shudder as they watched. Everyone called the teachers over to surround me, looking at me with faces full of suspicion. Not long after, the siren of an ambulance echoed from outside the school. When everyone turned their heads to look, they discovered the first person to arrive at the scene was actually a police officer in uniform. The dean of education was a bit dazed and asked, "Did any of you call the police?" The other teachers shook their heads in unison. With elite schools like this, even if someone died, the first move is usually to suppress the news. Yet the police appeared just like that. The dean saw things weren't looking good and stepped forward to smooth things over. "Officers, could there be some misunderstanding?" Unfortunately, before he could finish his sentence, he was cut off by a badge being flashed. Lu Zheng said with a serious face, "I am the captain of the 1st Administrative Police Squad. I received a report from a parent that a teacher here is suspected of child abuse. We asked the school to cooperate with the investigation." What? The dean's brain suddenly stalled, unable to react in time. What abuse? No way. Is this a joke? This is the largest elite school in this city. The teachers hired are all elites from home and abroad. How could they do such a thing in front of professionals? This kind of defense is completely meaningless. Whether it happened or not will be known after the investigation. Right now we want to see teacher Su Nyangxi. Lu Zheng put away his badge, his face clearly showing a sense of justice. The dean vaguely realized something was wrong. His face turned pale. "The person is indeed here, but I'm afraid you won't be able to ask anything now, because a student just seriously injured him." What? This time it was Lu Zheng's turn to be stunned. He looked toward the area behind them. The other party saw Xu Nyangxi lying collapsed on the ground, and me standing to the side looking very much like the culprit. Why is it this kid again? At this time, Ruan Guodong and Xia Royao had also arrived at the scene. Witnessing the bloody sight, both of them were startled and terrified. Xia Royao ignored the police blockade. She ran over and grabbed my shoulders tightly, asking anxiously, "Mu Chen, are you okay? Are you hurt anywhere?" The emergency medical staff nearby were speechless. No matter how you look at it, the person in danger definitely wasn't this child. Just as they were secretly shaking their heads and sighing, the bleeding from the back of Xu Nyangxi's head was finally stopped. Luckily, there were no fatal injuries. Once the heart rate and pulse stabilized, he could be taken to the hospital. The doctor removed his mask and didn't forget to lecture, "Hey kid, no matter how naughty you are, you must never use stones to hit people. That could really cause a major incident. You were lucky this time. You might not be so lucky next time." However, before the words were even finished, they saw me slowly shift my eyes. Once again, focusing my gaze on Xu Nyangxi's face. Is he not dead yet? The doctor was startled. Was this kid really trying to kill him? Xia Royao saw Lu Cheng approaching from behind. She quickly pulled me into a tight hug, intending to take the chance to throw away the stone I was holding. But just as she moved, her arm was held back. "Wait a moment." Lu Zheng quickly stepped forward and easily separated the two. "Classmate Sia, we've greeted each other a few times now. As an old acquaintance, I want to speak privately with the boy. It won't scare him, will it? Truly a veteran police officer." The moment he spoke, he blocked Xia Royao's excuse perfectly. Xia Royao bit her lip, unable to interfere further. Lu Zheng smiled slightly. He signaled to his other teammates to take Xia Royao's statement, then turned his head back to look at me and the sharp stone in my hand. "Mu Chen, I know your mind is very clear right now. So can you tell me, is the person on this ground there because you hit him? If it were any other child, psychological counseling might be needed to get a statement." But Lu Zheng had dealt with me before. He knew very well that my psychological resilience was incredibly strong. Therefore, he only leaned down slightly, looked me straight in the eye, and got straight to the point. At this moment, my mind was indeed very clear, but my body's reactions were a bit sluggish. Hearing that, I looked down at my hands, and then slowly replied, "I guess so." Lu Zheng was stunned. He didn't expect to get this answer. He continued to ask why. "Do you not remember anything?" I tried to recall and then nodded slightly. At that moment, I was too angry. In that loss of control, I really didn't remember clearly. This made Lu Zheng even more curious as to why I was so enraged. "What did you see? How could a child, who could stay calm even when facing armed robbers, be driven to such a fury that it caused him to lose his mind?" Hearing that, I snapped out of it and looked over there. Ruan Jingcheng and several other boys were being protected. Their parents had arrived without me even noticing. They were holding their children tightly to comfort them. I pointed my hand toward Shu, Nyangxi, and then pointed at those boys. My voice was slow and chillingly cold. He was secretly using corporal punishment to abuse them. The small grove suddenly fell deathly silent. Everyone's eyes widened in shock. Hearing those words, they looked as if they had just seen a ghost. A light breeze blew through, and on the other side, the parents of the children suddenly screamed out in distress. What kind of nonsense are you talking about? My son only sought out Teacher Sue for tutoring. That is a perfectly normal teacher-student relationship. Why do you dare to make up such nonsense? There's no way that happened. Clearly you just saw it wrong. You accidentally injured someone else. And now you want to shift the blame onto us. Mo Jingchuan, standing nearby, immediately chimed in. Teacher Sue would absolutely never do such a thing. It's just a bunch of failing students who keep pestering him for extra tutoring, so not even giving him a proper rest. He tutors them without even taking any money. He's truly a rare good teacher. The majority of students in the class nodded in unison. Only a scattered few huddled in a corner silent, without saying a single word, because of the serious nature of the incident. And because it involved the privacy of young children, the police quickly strung up tape to cordon off the small grove. They only kept the students from the class. Just as Mu Jingchuan finished his statement, he saw Xia Royao stride forward, facing the parents directly. Her expression was extremely grim. You've all seen the photos. If you don't believe it, then why did you all rush here? If you feel that your reputation is more important than the purity of your own children, then just let this beast continue to stay and teach. Though these words from the boy were harsh and hard to hear, every single word hit the nail on the head, causing the parents' faces to turn pale. They had received the news half an hour ago. After confirming with Xu Nyangxi about the photos in the phone, they had rushed over in a hurry. But when it was actually pointed out by me that their sons were being abused by a teacher, they couldn't help but panic deep down. The shame made it impossible for them to accept. We will transfer schools. One parent face, completely bloodless, bit their lip and said, now that things have turned out like this, whether it's true or not, we will not let our child study here anymore. After saying that parent shot Xu Nyangxi a glare that could kill. Perhaps compared to letting the fact that their son was victimized, get exposed, and having to face gossip later on, they'd rather choose a quiet settlement and act as if nothing ever happened. Xia Royao's face darkened and she said no more. Everyone has their own standpoint, and their choices differ as well. She couldn't force anyone. But if Xu Nyangxi isn't convicted today, I'll have to bear the label of assaulting someone without cause. Who knows what kind of extra hardship I'd face once I return to the Mu family. Ran Guodong approached Xia Royao, placing a hand on her shoulder so she wouldn't get too worked up. With a stern expression, he said, rest assured. If they don't sue, I definitely will sue this beast. If I don't throw him in prison to rot, then I, Ruan Guodong, don't need to roam this world anymore. He stared intently at Xu Nyangxi, who was lying on the ground, murderous intent clear in his eyes as he crouched down. The doctor who was providing first aid nearby now wished she could slap herself twice. She blamed herself for lecturing me, before understanding the situation. On one hand, she wanted to take action against Xu Nyangxi herself. Ran Guodong walked up to me and knelt on one knee. He forced a smile, but his eyes were already red. Good kid, he said, reaching out to take my arm. His voice choking up, I have to thank you. Thank you for saving Jingcheng. It's all my fault for being too busy normally. I just thought he was shy, which is why he hated school. If it weren't for you, he didn't dare to imagine what else his son would have had to endure. Thinking about all of this, he wished he could slap himself twice. I saw the regret and self-reproach on his face, but I couldn't quite understand it. So I used my clean hand to wipe away the tears from his face. My voice was youthful yet calm. The one who did wrong is the bad guy. The one who should cry is him, not you. I didn't understand why bad people don't repent even until death, while the victims are the ones who always torment themselves. Isn't it the villain who needs to repent? What kind of people are they? Their investigative skills are trash, but they're experts at suspecting their own family. Mu. Shuren had zero good feelings toward Lu, Zheng's crew. She grumbled while pulling me inside, looking at my thin wrists. She quickly urged the kitchen to whip up more dishes. By the time Madame Mu picked up Mu Jingchuan and returned from the hospital, the moment they stepped through the door, they saw the dining table overflowing with food. And Mu Shuran, who usually acts like she owns the place, was actually fussing over me. Do you eat this? Is it too spicy? This sweet and sour pork is fire. You gotta eat more meat to put some weight on. Being too skinny doesn't look good. Here, have some more soup. Let me ladle it for you. The Mu couple was completely stunned, because they had never received such special treatment. Mu Jingchuan, having just woken up, began to wail even louder. He threw himself into Madame Mu's arms to snitch. Mom, why does Big Sis like him and not me? He hit me so hard today. She should be hitting him instead. Madame Mu heard this and comfortingly soothed him. Dad and Mom truly didn't even bother to explain a single word to him. Mushiran pushed off the table and stood up, her beautiful face full of mockery. She stared straight into Mu Jingchuan's red, crying eyes and said, "You're asking why I like him? And not you. It's because he saved everyone, including you and Mom, from those robbers at the mall, while you only knew how to hide in Mom's arms and cry. After being saved, you still dared to flip the script and frame him." She never was one to hold back her words, but it was rare to see her use language this sharp. Madame Mu couldn't watch any longer and spoke up to advise her. "All right, Sharan, your younger brother was scared out of his wits too. Now everyone is safe and sound. Don't bring that up anymore." Mushiran looked at her mother, her eyes filled with complete disappointment. She suppressed her trembling voice. "Because I saw everyone from upstairs. I was afraid I'd be impulsive, so I was the first one down to save you and take Jingchuan away. Mom, do you know that a robber pointed a gun at my head? And I almost lost my life. You and Jingchuan kowtowing. To thank him wouldn't be too much. By what right are we not allowed to mention it now?" The emotions of Mushiran were so intense that they were stunned on the spot, not knowing how to react. Finally, I reached out my small hand and pointed at a dish on the table. I told her I wanted to eat that one. Only then did Mushiran wipe her face and turn back to serve the food to me. She curiously asked, "It seems you really like fish, huh? Did you live near the sea before?" I shook my head. There is no fish at the border. Occasionally, a refrigerated truck would pass by, but the fish bellies were stuffed with all kinds of things. I've grown this big and still haven't eaten seafood. It just looks very delicious. Eat slowly, watch out for fish bones. Mushiran was terrified by the stories about the border, so she hurriedly focused her attention on me, afraid I would choke. She no longer had the state of mind to pick a fight with Madame Mu and Mu Jingchuan. Mu Jingchuan was about to say something, but he was stopped by Father Mu. He led the mother and son into the study. "The results of the appraisal report are here." He handed the file to Madame Mu for them to look at together. Madame Mu looked at his expression and guessed there was an issue with the report. "Is there something wrong? He has no blood relation to us. He is not our son, huh?" When flipping to the last page of the appraisal results, Madame Mu screamed in shock. Mu Jingchuan, standing next to her, his eyes lit up as he cheered excitedly. "He's not part of our family. Dad, let's kick him out quickly." Madame Mu also regained her composure. She immediately nodded in agreement and said, "No wonder I always felt like I couldn't get close to him at all. Who knows where this fake came from anyway? Honey, why didn't you expose him right then? Why let Sharan serve him like that?" Both mother and son looked indignant, but Mu Bingwen, sitting behind his desk, spoke up after a long silence. "I cannot kick him out." "Why?" Madame Mu and Mu Jingchuan asked in unison. "Because the real Mu Chen very likely died at the hands of the kidnappers. But the old man wants to see Mu Chen. This is a Mu Chen really made for us." Mu Bingwen pulled out a cigarette and lit it, looking at the two across from him through the thin smoke. He said in a low voice, "So he must be Mu Chen? And he can only be Mu Chen. Once we inherit the assets from the old man, I'll throw him out of the Mu family. This house will only have one son, say, and that is Jingchuan. You don't need to worry about him fighting for Jingchuan's things." He decided to tell them the truth, simply because he didn't want the atmosphere at home to be too tense. As long as there's a bond of self-interest, they'll naturally maintain a fake peace on the surface. And the truth was exactly as he predicted. Mu Jingchuan immediately looked overjoyed, reducing his hostility toward me. As for Madame Mu, even though she knew her biological son was dead, and felt a bit of a void in her heart, compared to finding a wild, unruly child, the adopted son by her side was much better behaved. So after the mother and son walked out hand in hand, when they ran into me at the stairs, she actually managed a rare smile. Mu Jingchuan even proactively offered an invitation. "School starts soon and we're in the same class. How about I take you to school?" I wasn't interested and walked straight back to my room. I opened the pile of textbooks and picture books bought today. As I flipped through, I quickly memorized the new words. By the time I went to bed, I could already read picture books. As I lay in bed clutching the storybook, I felt that fairy tales were a bit unrealistic. Why? I always felt that the hunter would actually kill Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs wouldn't have the time to help her unconditionally. And with the witch's curse being so powerful, the prince shouldn't have been able to defeat the witch at all. In short, on my second night in the big city, everything felt very illusory to me. Early the next morning, before I had even woken up, there was a loud knock on the door. "Little Chen, are you up?" Mushiran poked her head in. When she saw the unopened computer boxes in the corner, she immediately got annoyed. "Did you just spend all night clutching those raggedy books? You didn't even bother to turn on the computer. What's so good about those children's books anyway? Your brain should be used for legitimate business. Don't waste it, you hear?" As she spoke, she quickly walked over to the boxes. In no time, the computer setup was assembled. Finally, 4 high-end, LCD monitors were arranged in a curve, placing me in the center until I practically vanished behind them. Currently, there's a competition in our Eastern District. I cordially invite you to join. If we win, I'll give you all the prize money. I looked expressionlessly at the hacker, Alliance website on the screen, and asked her, is this what you call legitimate business? No. Mushuran chuckled twice. Fighting off foreign invaders? How does that not count as righteous patriotism? The cause of the incident was provocation from foreign hackers. Those people hadn't just breached the defense systems, but also brazenly left insulting messages against the country right on the homepages. Before the authorities could take clear action, they decided to show the world what's what. A few days ago, we took first place in the competition, so this time we're the core force for the cyber warfare against the American side. But we're still rookies, so we're lacking a bit of confidence. Mushuran spoke with a hint of embarrassment. This is also their first time being forced to do something beyond their limits. If the first move fails, they'll become the laughingstock of the hacker world. I didn't care much about the prize money. I was just interested in the fact that programming code could actually be used to attack others. So I asked a question first. How much longer until it starts? Mushuran checked her watch. The general offensive starts in an hour. I nodded and started flipping through the programming book I bought yesterday. Mushuran was afraid there'd be parts I didn't get, so she straight up stayed in the room. I didn't even go down for breakfast. She had the nanny bring it up to the room. Madame Mew woke up early for yoga. After hearing about this, she just curled her lip and didn't say anything else. In the room, the two of us finished breakfast. I was still sipping on a glass of milk. On the other side, Mushuran had opened her computer to contact her teammates. Eldest Miss, how are your preparations coming along? Didn't you say you were inviting a pro? Has the pro arrived yet? Yeah, I'm freaking out over here. You know, we're about to face off against the US team. With our meager skills, I really have zero confidence. They didn't know beforehand how the championship was actually won. They were still totally in a daze. Mushuran monitored the situation while comforting her classmates. The person is already here and is currently reading. As soon as they heard the person had arrived, the others immediately got hyped. The great god has arrived. Well, hurry up and let us catch a glimpse. Mushuran had wanted to flex for a while, so she immediately opened the virtual camera, changed the face filter, and pulled both herself and me into the frame. Well, see him now? The people on the other side looked closely, suddenly realizing something was off. Why does this great god look so small? Is it just a height thing? Sharan looked at the kid who wasn't even as tall as the chair and nodded, saying, Yeah. The brat is still at the age where he's growing. Can't you see he's drinking milk? The group on the other side couldn't even force a laugh, only able to awkwardly play along. Seems like he's a young genius, just like the eldest miss. And so hardworking too, waking up early to read books. Mushuran, busy multitasking, casually replied, Exactly. Otherwise, he wouldn't even know basic programming, so he has to take a crash course. On the other side, it took a long while before someone finally spoke. Eldest miss, don't tell me. This great god is just a little kid, who's still wet behind the ears. Sharan thought to herself, it's not just programming books. He hasn't even fully mastered Chinese characters yet. But she definitely couldn't say that out loud. It would tilt her teammates too hard. You guys just relax. If he says it's fine, then there's definitely no problem. He already gave his word. Truthfully, before yesterday, if anyone told him that a child dared to break into a US government website to carry the team, he definitely would have thought that person was insane. But after witnessing the events at the mall, seeing me stay calm in the face of danger with my own eyes, along with my vibe of being a man of few words but extreme decisiveness. Now, as long as it's something I've nodded my head to, he had a strangely high level of confidence. But while he was confident, the other team members were not. They felt Mushuran had lost her mind. Can you look at the situation clearly, please? We're planning to infiltrate a US government website right now. Don't you know their technology and network security are top tier in the world? One slip up, and failing the infiltration would be the least of our worries. But if we get caught, we're going to prison. You're the eldest miss. Treat it like a precious treasure, so you aren't afraid of legal trouble. But we are. Whoever wants to play this crazy game can go ahead. The whole team immediately crumbled, losing their spirit and quitting. Mushuran originally thought they were just joking around, but then she saw them go AFK one by one, no longer showing as online. This 5-man squad was gathered back at the Academy of Sciences. Many were research students and PhDs over there. She called them up, but they were very adamant about not wanting to participate anymore. Mushuran was so pissed she cursed on the spot. She scolded them, You bunch of cowards are truly deserters. You guys were the ones hyped to form a team at first. Now you take first place but won't fight the final boss. If I knew it'd be like this, I wouldn't have bothered playing with you guys at all. After saying that, she slammed her phone down, her chest heaving violently from anger. She put all those teammates on her blacklist After blocking them, she slumped into her chair in dejection, then turned to look at me still focused on my book and let out a bitter laugh. She reached out to cover the page of my book. Stop reading. The mission is cancelled. We aren't doing it anymore. I looked up, my eyes clear and untainted. I asked curiously, no more being the light of justice. Mushuran sighed helplessly. She said, being the light of justice isn't that easy. Adults will always flinch. How can we do it with just the two of us? So, the authorities will probably just save face. They'll issue a stern condemnation and then just let it go, to get it over with. Thinking of this, he suddenly felt like learning programming was pointless. Being a hacker or pursuing justice. It was all just a bunch of lies. I couldn't quite grasp the loneliness and boredom in her eyes, but I felt that what she said wasn't right. Doing the right thing shouldn't distinguish between adults and children. If it's the kind of program we had yesterday, and I can do it just as well. Do you still want to join me? What? Mushuran was stunned and looked up at him, until she was fired up by the determination in his eyes. Her initial dejection completely vanished. She slowly sat up straight. Let's play. This time we're going big. She fired up the computer and left a message directly on the forum. We will definitely fire the first shot. Originally, this was just a post to boost morale, but very quickly, other hackers who caught wind of the news started mocking her below. I heard your team has completely disbanded. So what can you achieve all by yourself? When you guys won the championship, I already smelled something fishy. Sure enough, you've crashed and burned halfway, haven't you? Come on, fire that shot right into my chest. Let me see how badass you really are. Don't tell me you can't even track down my API address. Those who could register on the Hacker Alliance forum were all major players. No one was willing to back down to anyone else. Mushuran's skills weren't bad at all. She just seemed a bit green when dropped into a group of great gods. These bastards! She was so angry she wanted to roll up her sleeves and grab her keyboard to dive into the fight. But just as she looked down and saw him seriously studying next to her, she immediately felt like she'd been given a sedative. Her whole body calmed down. Now is not the time to act on emotions. Later, he needs to coordinate perfectly with me. So for the next few hours, we continuously rehearsed. At 2 p.m., while the forum post was flooded with mocking comments, I put my books away and sat at the main server, firing up all 4 monitors. We officially launched a general offensive on the official website of the world's leading tech nation. Initially, no one paid attention, even thinking this campaign would go down the drain. On the forum, they vented a stream of anger at the failing Team 5, trash champions. Aren't they just a bunch of kids wet behind the ears, daring to face off against the Dark King? They should check their own strength first. The great gods have all retreated to the second string. Who else can take down Uncle Sam now? Just as everyone was whispering and discussing heatedly, someone suddenly posted a holy crap comment below. Uncle Sam's official site is down, go check it out fast. When people saw it, they thought it was a malicious prank, just a joke. But when they switched tabs, intending to take a screenshot to keep mocking, and went to Uncle Sam's page, everyone was stunned. That massive website that had just been hacked, its interface had turned a vibrant red. On it, peonies were blooming one by one. Truly a flowers blooming for prosperity picture. Even though there wasn't a single word in the image, it was full of memes only a Chinese person would get. Haha, what genius did this? This is hilarious, flowers blooming for prosperity. Wishing good people a peaceful life. My picky mom walked by, took a glance, and even praised Uncle Sam for having decent taste. The atmosphere in this post shifted abruptly, and soon the original poster reappeared. First shot, 3 short clear words that directly silenced everyone. It took them a long time to finally react. The opponent made their move exactly at the scheduled time, and the vanguard strike actually succeeded. Everyone was caught completely off guard, and there was absolutely no time to figure out what was happening. They had to rush the original formation into readiness and attack other official websites one after another. On the second floor of the Mew House, Mushuran, after casually leaving that comment, leaned back comfortably in her chair and whistled, then couldn't help but let out a silly smirk. She looked over at me and saw me staring intently at a photo. On the phone, she gave my little head a serious flick. How on earth did you come up with that? Leaving no words, only an image. And such a sarcastic one at that. I was watching just now and laughed until my stomach hurt. I tilted my head to look at her, my dark eyes filled with confusion, explaining that it was because I didn't understand their language. Fair enough. As an elementary student who just started learning Hanzi, English was indeed a bit too much. Plus she said this was a greeting photo with many beautiful flowers. I held up her phone, looking so sincere that Mushuran had to fake a cough, avoiding my gaze out of a bit of guilt. Earlier, when I asked how to greet the opponent, she thought I was being sarcastic and intentionally gave me an old person's meme. She didn't expect me to actually be serious, but this could be considered a lucky strike that hit the mark perfectly. Next, I diligently and meticulously edited the photos. while editing the images. I also blocked the incoming attacks meant to restore the opponent's data. To me, this was just something done in passing. But Uncle Sam's technical staff on the other side were clearly about to lose their minds. The official site even left a message. Don't go too far. Hurry up and lift the ban. Give us back our homepage. We admit defeat. Can't everyone just have a peaceful exchange? Mushuran scrolled through the comments with a look of disdain. Peaceful exchange, why didn't you do that before? Immediately after, the official media of Uncle Sam's FBI issued a notice declaring they would focus on capturing those involved in this network infiltration. Mushuran felt a bit anxious, glancing at the anti-tracking system just installed, and turned to ask me beside her, is this anti-tracking system really okay? Even though the code looked high-end and left her incredibly amazed. What if Uncle Sam had even better technical staff? Hearing that, I didn't give her a definitive answer, but shook my head and replied, I don't know. That's why I have to make this picture a bit more beautiful. Mushuran was stunned, not understanding for a moment. What did this have to do with the picture? I thought about it and answered, a beautiful photo shows more sincerity. Sincerity in greetings. Shuran suddenly felt this child was too honest, but the world of adults was much more complicated than I imagined. Immediately she sat up straight, no longer daring to relax comfortably, but constantly monitoring Uncle Sam's tracking movements, fearing that the next second the police would show up at the door. I could sense her fear. I stopped typing and turned to say, you can go out. If you're scared, you can back out. Even if I get caught, I won't snitch on you. Shuran turned to meet my firm gaze, suddenly feeling ashamed of her own recent hesitation. If a little brat like you isn't scared, then what do I have to be afraid of? At worst, I'll just go serve time with you. She ashed her teeth and got her spirit back. But I looked at her and thought to myself, we are not the same. She has a family. If something happens, someone will cry tears of grief for her, but I'm just an orphan with no strings attached. Even if I die, no one would care. So I've never been afraid of any threat. At this time on the forum, someone sent a private message to Mushuran. She opened it and found it was a hacker from another group. Hey, you there? What anti-tracking system are you guys using? Can you install one for me? Mushuran looked at the ID and found it familiar. It seemed to be the person who mocked her in the post. She directly rejected them. As a result, less than 2 minutes later, another person came to ask for the system. Mushuran felt a bit curious, so she asked back, why is everyone coming to me? Why don't you go ask the Dark King? The Dark King was the most senior person in the Hacker Alliance forum, and his skills were top tier. Last time, if I hadn't gotten lucky and broken through the enemy's defense, the top spot would have definitely been his. To her surprise, the other side messaged back. The Dark King was the first one to get wiped. Apparently Uncle Sam just developed a new type of tracking program and secretly sold it to other countries. As soon as we hacked in, we were chased out like crazy. Only you guys are still safe and sound? After reading this, Mushuran's expression became incredibly complex. She turned to stare at him in total shock. She never imagined that, while she was green with fear, and felt he wasn't reliable enough. It turned out she had been sheltered in a safe harbor all along. Little god, just what kind of deity are you? She couldn't help but rush over and hug him. If he hadn't resisted with all his might, she probably would have kissed, cuddled, and lifted him straight into the air. Now that the danger was completely neutralized, she finally had the peace of mind to care about the survival of others. After explaining the whole situation to him, she didn't forget to advise. Of course, it's perfectly reasonable if we don't give it to them. After all, they were the ones who looked down on us first. You don't need to feel burdened. Psychologically, there's no moral kidnapping going on here. But after thinking it over carefully, I still decided to give them the program. This should count as being the light of justice, right? Mushuran was stunned, not expecting me to still remember that. She looked down, met my clear eyes, and smiled. Yeah, right now you are the light. The beautiful and sparkling light of humanity. At 5 p.m., the cyber siege that had lasted for 3 whole hours finally came to an end. The homepages of various countries were all flying the bright red flag. No insults, no trash talk. Even the first website to be hacked was still that peaceful flowers blooming for prosperity mural. This made the citizens following this battle compete to praise the generosity and vision of the hackers from China, compared to the foreign hackers who openly spewed insults before. This time China straight up won on a whole new level. The capital's official website also seemed, because it didn't cause any negative disturbances, to choose to stay silent. The next day they even changed their homepage banner to the flowers blooming for prosperity wallpaper. The post Mushuran opened back then also became a top-tier thread seen by everyone, but the IDs that had made sarcastic remarks had all evaporated one by one, leaving no trace. Some directly deleted their comments. Those who hurried to admit their mistakes thanked Mushuran directly in the thread for not holding a grudge and lending a helping hand. Mushuran didn't take the credit either, replying directly, "No need to thank me. It's not that I'm generous. It's that my little brother is kind-hearted. The person who led the general offensive this time wasn't me." When people saw this message, they looked at it from every angle but still didn't quite get it. So they commented asking, "Is this little brother literal or figurative? If you're just flexing your relationship, then act like I said nothing." Mushuran sent a smug sticker. "He's my actual little brother." Everyone could vaguely guess Mushuran's age, so they were even more unable to imagine her biological brother. "How old is your esteemed younger brother this year?" Mushuran looked at how timid and cautious these people were and felt extremely smug. She typed a reply, "Mu Chen is 10 years old this year, hee hee." As soon as this answer was posted, the hackers across the entire Hacker Alliance forum went absolutely crazy. The crowd that always considered themselves geniuses couldn't have imagined in their wildest dreams the person leading them to complete a battle of such internet-shaking proportions. No matter how you thought about it, it was too absurd. But with the previous precedent, no one dared to doubt Mushuran anymore, and even less did anyone dare to mock her. At that time, many people sent private messages wanting to buy the mini anti-tracking firewall I made. After showering, Mushuran knocked on my door, seeing me wrapped in a small blue blanket, on the bed, reading a fairy tale comic. She actually dazed off for a moment, doubting whether everything that happened during the day was actually real or not. Seeing me look over, she finally snapped out of it. She cleared her throat twice and spoke. "I'm here to ask if you want to sell that mini firewall." "Sell it." I had just been introduced to the internet, so I had no idea that code could be bought and sold. Clutching my book, I asked, "Is that thing valuable?" Mushuran burst out laughing, knowing my head only held concepts of snacks. She gave a specific example to make it easy for me to understand. "It can probably buy 10 times your current pile of snacks." Hearing that, my eyes lit up and I nodded repeatedly. "I'll sell it. Then the money will be temporarily transferred to my account first. Tomorrow, I'll take you to open a bank account." Mushuran gave an okay sign, then closed the door and stepped out. I calculated the size of 10 huge bags of snacks. The corners of my mouth unconsciously curled into a smile. This feeling was even better than reading fairy tales. The next day, I crawled out of bed to brush my teeth very early. After breakfast, I sat obediently on the sofa waiting. The Mu parents were very surprised to see me like this. Father Mu asked caringly, "Why did you wake up so early, Xiao Chen Kia?" Holding a glass of milk, I silently replied, waiting for Sharan. Hearing that Father Mu's brow furrowed almost imperceptibly. Then he smiled and corrected, "You should call her sister." "Sister." I turned to stare at him without saying a word. Those pitch black eyes, with a gaze that felt like it could see through one's soul, immediately made Father Mu feel very uneasy. He gave 2 awkward laughs. "Ha ha. If you won't call her that, then fine. You're probably not used to it." He looked away, just in time to see Mushuran walking down the stairs. He immediately calls out, "Sharan, he's been waiting for you for a while. Are you two planning to hang out together?" "We have to go out." Mushuran's eyes were barely open. Last night, the software sale was a total frenzy. Those big shots, who are usually incredibly arrogant and high and mighty, were all running to beg her. It was so annoying she only managed to nap at dawn. Now yawning nonstop from sleepiness, she casually replied, "Going to deposit some money for my little brother." Qin Mengyue, who was meditating by the window, suddenly snapped her eyes open. What money does he even have a share in this house? Mushuran was too lazy to heed her mother's scolding, rolled her eyes, and walked into the dining room for breakfast. Mother Mu chased after her, incessantly advising Sharan, "You must keep your own money yourself, you hear me? Don't just give it to others randomly. If you want to give it away, give it to Jingchuan. He's the one whose background we actually know. Mom, there's a limit to your favoritism." Mushuran, even this early in the morning, couldn't hold back her temper. She directly cut her mother off and said coldly, "I'm your biological daughter, yet you're guarding against me like a thief. What exactly are you trying to do?" Mother Mu was momentarily speechless, not wanting to say it directly, that the boy wasn't her biological child, so she could only look at Father Mu for help. Father Mu stepped up, placed a hand on Mu, Sharan's shoulder, and asked probingly, "Your mother is just afraid you'll waste money. That's why she asked. He's still just a little boy. Why do you need to open an account for him? Normally, can't he just keep his allowance in a drawer? Because it won't fit in there anymore, duh." Mushuran was the type who responded well to sweet talk. Lowering her guard, she spilled everything. "My little brother is amazing. He sold software online and already has a fortune worth hundreds of billions. Opening an account is just more convenient." What the Mu couple was simultaneously shocked and terrified. They were a bit skeptical, wondering if they had misheard. Yechen sold software and made 10 billion Vietnamese dong. How could that poor kid they brought back have such skills? But Mushuran had no reason to lie to them. The couple looked at each other, immediately swallowing the objections they were about to voice. Father Mu patted his daughter's shoulder, looking incredibly proud. "Our Sharan is finally acting like a proper big sister. Since you're heading to the bank anyway, Go ahead and handle the procedures to register his household residency while you're at it. From now on, we'll truly be one family. Since I first arrived here, they hadn't even mentioned the residency registration. Mushuran thought her father had forgotten. So hearing this, she was finally satisfied. She nodded in agreement. Yes, just leave it to me. I sat in the living room and finished my milk, looking up at the warm family of 3 over there. My eyes dark like a cat's, reflected the brilliant rays of the sun. After eating, Mushuran changed into a sporty outfit and finally led me outside. Just as we were about to get into the family car, I pulled on her sleeve and tilted my small face up saying, "I'm not taking this car." "Wait, Sharan." So she had to follow me out to the main gate. She saw a Rolls Royce slowly pull up to the curb. After the car came to a full stop, Jia Rojiao's elegant and graceful face appeared. She waved at me happily. "Since you reached out to hang out, have you been doing well these past 2 days?" I nodded and stepped forward to pull the car door open, but found the handle was too high, making it a struggle. Mushuran leaned in, stepped up to open the door, and casually picked me up. "We're going to handle business. Why'd you call her? Is it possible I can't even finish this small task?" Oh. As soon as she got in, Mushuran grumbled in dissatisfaction. I sat to one side and said nothing, waiting until the car started, and drove out of the villa complex gates. I finally spoke up out of nowhere. "I am not your biological brother." Ya Rojiao, sitting in the front, gasped and slammed the brakes. She turned her head around, seeing Mushuran looking like she'd seen a ghost, completely failing to understand why this kid would suddenly snitch on himself. I raised my hand and pointed at Jia Rojiao, telling Mushuran, "If you don't believe me, ask her." Jia Rojiao rubbed her nose, feeling like she'd been set up. But the cause of this really was her fault, and the suggestion had also come from her. So half an hour later, after the car stopped, she confessed the entire truth and was promptly dragged out by Mushuran for a beating. She almost suffered internal injuries before it was over. "You guys actually dared to team up and trick me." Mushuran was still fuming with uncontrollable rage, feeling like all her affection had been betrayed. Jia Rojiao clutched her stomach with a pained, helpless look. At that time, I was just afraid the police would lure the robbers' accomplices out us. So I wanted the kid to use a fake identity. At most, once the DNA report came out, I was going to take him to my house. Mushuran was still mad as hell, so she casually asked, "What DNA report?" "The DNA test. Yesterday, my dad said he saw your dad go pick it up." Jia Rojiao's pain from earlier subsided, and she finally realized the situation wasn't quite right. She sat up straight, frowning as she asked, "Your dad didn't tell you guys the results?" "The test papers were received yesterday." If Mushuran knew the truth, there was no way she'd be reacting like this. Mushuran's jaw dropped, and suddenly a burst of fire, of anger, turned into a mass of bubbles. She said, dazed, "I don't know." Not only did they not say anything, but this morning, my dad even told me to go handle the residency registration for the kid. At this moment, I spoke up softly from the side. "What do they want to adopt me for?" "Why though?" Jia Rojiao was slightly stunned, asking in confusion. "The Mu family isn't some ordinary family. They're true elites, inheriting wealth accumulated over several generations. Even as an adopted child, one could live in luxury for a lifetime. Why would a family like that bring back a child with no blood relation? Just like that, Only this time I didn't need to provide the answer. Having finally reacted, Mushuran said through gritted teeth, "They're doing this for great-grandfather's inheritance." Hearing that, Xia Ruojiao felt like she'd been struck by lightning, with the side branches of the family rising up and being the bloodline of the clan. It wasn't strange for Father Mu to pull something like this. In the situation where the company has been losing money constantly in recent years, he wants to use the great-grandfather's legacy to quickly expand the scale. Internal family matters like this are something outsiders can't interfere with. Seeing Mushuran's emotions fluctuating wildly as she leaned straight back into her seat, Jia Ruojiao could only turn back around and silently continue driving. Inside the car, Mushuran calmed down for a long time before asking me as I sat beside her, "Why did you tell me the truth?" I couldn't empathize with her mood. Only speaking truthfully, I don't want to join the Mu household. Mushuran understood immediately, thinking about her parents' indescribable hypocrisy after they learned the truth. She just felt an overwhelming tightness in her chest. "Don't worry, I won't take a single cent from you, and I won't let them take it either," she guaranteed through gritted teeth. I nodded, then stared at her and said seriously, "You're not like them. You're a good person." Mushuran paused, comforted by these words, and her bitter mood gradually began to improve. She began plotting for me again. "If that's the case, you should just straight up split into your own household." Jia Ruojiao, driving in the front seat, heard this and gave a kind reminder. A head of household must have their own residential land. What exactly is that? Mushuran had never dealt with this kind of stuff before, but for me, a simple explanation was enough. To understand it meant land and housing. So doesn't that mean I need to buy a house? Mushuran frowned. She didn't expect it to be such a hassle. Jia Ruojiao smiled, looking into the rearview mirror to invite me. "I have an uncle. who happens to be in the real estate business. If you trust me, I'll take you over to there to look at some houses. My heart stirred slightly, and I agreed almost without hesitation. Xia Rojiao's uncle was naturally no ordinary character. He was the biggest real estate tycoon in this city. After the three of us entered the sales gallery, Xia Rojiao made a phone call to him, then said, too bad he's away on business and can't make it here. But Uncle Nguyen already arranged someone, but they'll be leading us around in a bit. Hearing Xia Rojiao say that, Mu Chen unhurriedly walked over to the glass display in the middle of the hall, curiously leaning in to look at the scale model inside. As a kid, I lived in dilapidated shacks, with black scorch marks everywhere. I heard someone had died there. Every day the old man would scrub a little bit, and the walls would become clean. He told me that once it was all wiped clean, this place would be our home. I didn't really understand. I just felt that as long as there was no wind or rain leaking in, having a roof over my head was good enough. I asked if a place with just him and me couldn't be a home. I remember the old man's eyes were very kind then, but he still shook his head, saying that only a proper house could be considered. A home, a place that's clean, warm, and full of love, where others, would be willing to move in and become your family. I wanted to say that I didn't need a new family, that having the old man by my side was enough. Unfortunately, before the black ash on the walls was wiped clean, the old man was already gone. For all these years, I had always lived in a thatched hut at the back of the village, or like an owl, staying up all night on the village roads as a little street watchman, never having a roof of my own. Now looking at these gorgeous models, I thought that if I could buy a house like this, the old man would surely love to move in. Suddenly, a figure nearby pushed through and shouted, "Move it, kid." Who's not watching their brat and letting him cause trouble? That woman bumped into us, but she was the one playing the victim. She lifted her skirts and yelled, "Do you have any idea how much this dress cost? If you get it dirty, can you even afford to pay for it?" The sales staff hurried over to apologize. "We're so sorry, ma'am. It was our management's oversight. Please calm down." Another receptionist walked over and leaned down to ask where my parents were, only to hear that woman say arrogantly, "Calm down, that's it, Syracuse. This little brat absolutely has to apologize to me. If his parents won't teach him, then I'll do it for them. Don't you dare stop me. I'm close with your manager, you know." She was incredibly smug, even using the manager to threaten them. The staff members present instantly didn't dare to move. Seeing that the woman looked satisfied, heading toward me with her head held high, she looked down at me with eyes full of contempt and said, "Pengcheng Real Estate really lets just any lowlife in these days. Just look at how poor you look. I bet your parents brought you here to broaden your horizons. Didn't they too bad a poor person like you could probably work your whole life and still not afford even a toilet in this place." I smelled the pungent perfume on that woman, and there was a faint familiar scent to it. I silently took half a step back and asked the staff member nearby, "Is the toilet here really that expensive?" The staff member was stunned, looking down at my small, serious face, and immediately couldn't help but chuckle. They were totally charmed by the cuteness. Seeing this, the woman was very dissatisfied. "What's with that look on your face? Can't you see I'm teaching this brat a lesson?" She stepped forward, shoved the staff member aside, and reached out intending to pinch my ear. I'm very sensitive to the malice of others, so I instinctively tilted my head to dodge. Coincidentally, right behind her was the glass display case. The woman couldn't react in time and slammed straight into it. She screamed, "Ah, it hurts so much." Everyone present was startled and panicked. The woman's knee had hit the counter hard, and blood was gushing out. The balding man with her anxiously held the woman. She cried while not forgetting to point at me and snitch to her husband, "It's all that brat's fault. You must get justice for me." The bald guy also looked furious, shouting at the nearby staff, "Why haven't you kicked him out yet? Then bring his parents here to apologize and pay up, or else I'll sue you all to death." The staff immediately looked troubled. Just as they turned to lead me out to temporarily calm the situation, they saw two beautiful girls walking through the door. Their expressions were worse than each other's. In just a few steps, they were in front of me, simultaneously shielding me. Mushuran, holding a coffee in her left hand, spoke up. I wondered who it was. "You've got quite the mouth. Kicking people out at the drop of a hat. Anyone who didn't know would think Pengcheng Real Estate was owned by your family." In her right hand, she held a small cake, lifting her chin as she glared at the bald guy. The bald guy was paralyzed with fear. "Young Mistress Mu." He then looked at Xia Rojao beside her and became even more panicked. "The two young mistresses are also here. What is the relationship between you two and this child, Icheti?" Xia Rojiao rarely relied on her status to bully others, but today she wanted to try it out. She gave a faint smile and said, "He is my lifesaver." Mushuran immediately refused to be outdone and chimed in, saying, "This is my brother whom I just reunited with. My biological brother." At this point, the bald guy began to break into a cold sweat. Xia Rojiao observed his expression then looked at the woman sitting on the chair, still maintaining her smile as she said, I thought someone showing off while buying a house like this would be your wife. Hearing this, the bald guy's face completely changed. He instinctively stood up and started bowing in apology. I'm sorry, young Mistress Mew, I didn't know this was the young master of the Mew family. If I had known, I would never have dared to be so reckless. Mushuran's presence wasn't inferior to that woman's at all. She said coldly, is he the one you provoked? Why are you standing here apologizing? She jerked her chin toward the space behind him, ordering, get the person involved out here. The bald guy didn't dare to disobey. Yes, yes. He turned around and grabbed the woman's arm. Hurry up and apologize to the Mew family's young master. Is he someone you can afford to offend? You're truly a stupid woman with no eyes. In his heart, he was extremely annoyed because she had caused trouble. But unexpectedly, she was even more upset than he was. She shoved his hand away and said, what are you doing? You're hurting me. Seeing herself become the target of criticism, she raised her hand and slapped the bald guy across the face. You useless piece of trash. You can't even protect your own woman. What good are you anyway? The crisp slap left everyone present stunned. They had seen fake big shots acting tough before, but they had never seen a mistress slap her sugar daddy like this before. The bald guy's face turned beet red as he prepared to speak, but he was kicked again by that woman. She said with pure disgust, get lost. I'm dumping you right now, so stop being an eyesore here. After speaking, she looked back at Xia Ruojiao and the other, pointing her red-nailed hand arrogantly while saying, and as for you guys, don't you dare leave. I'm going to teach you a lesson. Xia Ruojiao and Mu Shuran locked eyes. In this city, those who could actually trouble them, while being a big shot figure, were honestly very few and far between. The woman pulled out her phone and skillfully dialed a number. A few minutes later, a figure rushed into the main hall from outside. Seeing him, the staff all chirped their greetings. Hello, director. The man who arrived was about 40 years old, wearing a suit and having a thin frame. After nodding cursorily to everyone, he leaned in close to the woman, instantly switching to a flattering smile. Yua, who pissed you off, tell me, and I'll take care of them for you. Whatever you do, don't stay mad. It's bad for your health. And that would break my heart. Looking at that nauseatingly slick behavior, the bald guy's face turned pale green. But the director of Pengcheng Real Estate was also someone he couldn't afford to offend, so he could only clutch his face and retreat sulkily to the side. The woman exaggerated the story as she retold it, then bossly demanded the man vent her anger for her. Anyway, if you don't make me happy today, don't even think about contacting me again. The man coaxed her, okay, just leave everything to me. He was practically worshipping her like his own parent. He turned his head towards Xia Ruojiao and the other, frowned and said, this is a sales office, and we sell high-end residential properties here. It's not a place for kids like you to hang out. Now, you've bumped into one of our customers. By right, you must apologize and pay compensation. Xia Ruojiao looked at him amused. That's a very formal way of putting it. Don't you know my father's last name is Xia and is an acquaintance of your boss? The Xia family and the Nguyen family are related by marriage. It's completely official. Xia Ruojiao had even been here many times before. Being reminded like that, the man vaguely remembered, and his expression shifted slightly, looking a bit awkward. But when the woman behind him snorted coldly, he regained his tough stance and said in a deep voice, no matter who you are, at Pengcheng Real Estate, the customer is king. At the very least, please apologize immediately. Xia Ruojiao was stunned, her expression turning unsightly. Mu Shuran, standing beside her, whispered mockingly, looks like your reputation doesn't carry much weight here, huh? Just as the situation hit a stalemate, I tugged on Xia Ruojiao's sleeve. Xia Ruojiao turned around and I waved her over. Not knowing what was going on, she leaned down curiously and heard me whisper a sentence in her ear. Her expression turned to one of shock. Are you serious? Seeing me nod firmly, she slowly furrowed her brows, stood up straight and spoke to the two opposite us. If we can't negotiate, then call the cops. Let the police handle this. Everyone present was startled. Call the police for what? They felt blowing this small matter out of proportion was overkill. But Xia Ruojiao's attitude was very firm. Regardless, we are not apologizing. In fact, we're suing that woman for threatening a child. That hot-tempered woman, naturally exploding at the slightest spark, barked back. Call the cops then. Call them, let's see. Who here dares to testify for you? Hearing that, the surrounding staff looked troubled. It truly was a nasty little devil situation. Xia Ruojiao might be related to the big boss, but their direct superior was this manager. If they offended him, they'd never have a peaceful day at work again. Mu Shuran laughed out of sheer anger. Who knew the great young Mistress Mu could actually get bullied in a dump like this? I'm really having my eyes open today. So she took out her phone and sent a group message, calling all her party-loving friends over. So by the time the police car arrived, Mu Shuran had already started a live stream. Hey guys, Today is going to be spicy. A member of our Mu family went house hunting and got framed. Don't miss out if you're passing by. Come see what kind of trash dares to mess with our Mu family. Heard the opponent has someone backing them at Pengcheng Real Estate to provide fake testimony. These childhood friends of Mu Shuran were all silver-spooned heirs and socialites, usually on all the major platforms. They only liked to flex their wealth. When they had nothing to do, they'd start a live stream to show off the lifestyle of the rich, attracting quite a lot of followers. But most people had a psychological resentment toward the wealthy. Hearing the accusations on the live stream, they began clapping back in the comment section. Isn't it just the young Mistress Mu bullying others? Look everyone, that woman's knee is all scraped up, and it's still bleeding. Like, no matter how you look at it, she's the victim. Exactly how can rich people like you get bullied? At a real estate sales office, you've got to be joking. You socialites need to start acting like actual human beings. It's one thing to spend your time flexing and partying, but now you're bullying ordinary people. Have you no shame? Musharan also knew that netizens had a bad impression of them, but her goal in live streaming today was simply to stop Pengcheng Real Estate from pulling any dirty tricks. So as soon as the police arrived on the scene, she immediately made a demand. We want to check the surveillance footage. Lu Zheng looked at the two sisters before him, speechless. He felt like he was having a run of bad luck with them lately. Everywhere he went, he ran into this young Mistress Mu. I hope you understand our police force is very busy. For these minor disputes, please settle them at the local ward office. He rubbed his temples. He even had a ring of blisters around his mouth. Lately, he'd been working day and night without rest, investigating a domestic drug trafficking case, on top of a shopping mall robbery. He was so busy his head was throbbing. More importantly, the drug case still had 0 leads, which made his mood pretty foul. Musharan was dissatisfied with his attitude. She grabbed me by the back of my collar and said, "You think this kid is some brat who just runs around, crashing into people?" I opened my dark eyes wide in confusion. Being held up like this made me look even more innocent and honest. Lu Zheng looked at me and indeed felt I didn't seem the type. Actually, forget doesn't seem like it. Someone who could single-handedly take down a mall robber was already far beyond 99% of adults. He was completely outside the category of a normal child. The woman opposite us started throwing a tantrum. What is the meaning of this now? You're all in cahoots, aren't you? She immediately pinned a huge accusation on Lu Zheng. Musharan turned back to glare at her. The woman smirked triumphantly. That brat thought she could use a live stream to manipulate public opinion. Then don't blame her for adding fuel to the fire. Talk was cheap. To her, they were still just green and naive. Just as Musharan was reaching her boiling point, Jia Rojiao, who was usually calm and thought things through before acting, suddenly rushed forward. She grabbed the woman's wrist and started dragging her outside. The woman's face turned pale with rage. What do you think you're doing? Are you crazy? Since her leg was already injured moving, even a bit made her lose her mind from the pain. She grabbed her handbag and swung it straight at Xia Rojiao. Seeing this, Lu Zheng had no choice but to step in. Stop fighting, so. Stop it. But before he could even take 2 steps, he saw a small figure dash out like a flash and pounce straight onto that woman. I bit down hard on the woman's wrist. She screamed in agony, "You crazy little brat! Get the hell off me!" She prepared to swing her arm and fling me away, but I tilted my head to dodge and smoothly yanked the zipper of her handbag. After a zipping sound, everything inside came tumbling out onto the floor. Lu Chen instinctively looked down, and his expression shifted instantly as he let out a loud shout, "Nobody move!" When the black muzzle of his gun was drawn, the scuffling crowd in the hall froze in shock. The rich kids on the live stream also stood jaw-dropped. Was it just a hair-pulling catfight? There was no need to pull out a gun, but very quickly they saw Lu Zheng push through the crowd, pick up a syringe from the floor, along with a piece of silver foil, sniffed it, and then pointed his gun directly at the woman. "Ma'am, I am officially arresting you for drug-related offenses. I require you to follow us to the station to undergo an investigation." At this moment, everyone finally understood, casting their eyes toward the pile of items strewn from the handbag on the ground. "Open up, Buck. Open the door for me, or I'll kill you all." With a ferocious face, the guard's limbs trembled in fear. Luckily, Lu Zheng arrived just in time, bringing the woman down to the ground, pinning her arms back and handcuffing her. Lu Zheng temporarily placed the woman on the sofa, explaining that she had likely overdosed on illegal substances. Her nervous system is a bit unstable. A new type of drug has appeared in the city recently. Inhaling it makes one irritable and violent, even leading to antisocial personality traits. Everyone please stay vigilant. Hearing this, everyone suddenly realized. No wonder she feared nothing on heaven or earth, daring to offend even Xia Rojiao and Mu Shuran. "Oh, right." Xia Rojiao pointed at the manager nearby and said, "Captain Lu, this gentleman here is likely an accomplice. You guys should take him in for investigation too." That manager was the very same man who helped that woman vent her anger after she was called out. A flash of panic crossed his eyes, but he tried to act calm and said, "Young Mistress Sia, you're abusing public power for a personal vendetta." Before he could even finish his sentence, Lu Zheng walked up with a dark expression. "Just now, when the suspect tried to flee, you intentionally obstructed me. Since you're the manager of the sales office, you can fully provide the customer list, so I'll need you to come with me." The manager instantly went silent, realizing the other party wasn't easy to fool. He turned around intending to bolt. Unfortunately, he was caught by a prepared Lu Zheng after rolling up his sleeves and seeing needle marks on his arm. The truth was basically crystal clear. After that the investigation expanded, Lu Zheng made a call to assemble his team members, while simultaneously cordoning off the scene, strictly forbidding anyone from entering or leaving to cooperate with the investigation, with that woman as the breakthrough point. Half an hour later, all the leads were brought to light. That woman was actually the dealer, and the manager was the middleman who helped introduce customers. They had spread a web of connections across the entire city. Pengcheng Real Estate was their next target for distribution. As the team members took the woman away, they even winked at Lu Zheng, giving a thumbs up to praise their captain for being so badass. Snagging the dealer in one go and cracking a major case was as easy as pie for him. In reality, he himself was quite dazed, not understanding how. He clearly came to handle a minor dispute, but somehow ended up cracking a case. Lu Zheng turned his head to look back at the scene. Besides a group of staff undergoing inspection and a bunch of rich heirs live streaming, there were only Xia Ruojiao and Mu Shuran left, right? And there was that strange child too. If I remember correctly, it was that kid who yanked down the woman's bag. Just as he stepped forward, he was blocked by a young woman's figure. Calling the police was my idea. I happen to have a few details to add for the captain. A smile bloomed on Xia Ruojiao's elegant face, appearing quite harmless. Lu Zheng paused, squinting as he sized her up. "It was you. So did you really call the cops over a minor spat, or did you realize the other party was a criminal?" Xia Ruojiao glanced around, noting the peeking live stream cameras, and calmly replied, "I saw needle marks on his arm." Lu Zheng frowned, feeling there was a huge loophole in those words. Based only on that, it would be hard for an ordinary person to think of contraband. Xia Ruojiao acted as if she had just realized something, saying with a very innocent expression, "Is that so? I guess I've watched too many police dramas, so I got a bit paranoid. But if a lucky guess helped the police, then I suppose it's still a good deed." She made it sound so simple, but Lu Zheng still felt his heart filled with suspicion. When he turned his head to look for that child, he discovered the boy had already vanished. At a small table in a hidden corner, I was sitting on a high stool, using a small spoon to scoop up bites of the cake in front of me. This was the cake Mu Shuran had just gone out to buy. Seeing no one around, she leaned in close and whispered, "You're the one who told Xia Ruojiao to call the cops, right?" I held a mouthful of fresh cream and closed my eyes, satisfied with the sweet flavor on the tip of my tongue. Hearing her, I just gave a slight nod in admission. Mu Shuran took a sharp breath of cold air, her curiosity growing even more intense. "How did you find out he had a problem, eh?" I reluctantly swallowed the cream, then finally held up my spoon and spoke. "When he bumped into me, I saw needle marks on his arm. Plus he had the smell of tinfoil on him." Mu Shuran wasn't very familiar with that kind of stuff. "Tinfoil, but I used to see it a lot at the border. The people who use that stuff up, they love to pour the powder onto the foil and then light it up. They say doing that gives a better high and tastes better. So when I caught that scent earlier, I knew for sure that woman was a pro." Mu Shuran felt a bit annoyed. "Then why didn't you tell me, huh?" Even though the two of them weren't blood related, they still lived under the same roof. In terms of how close they were, she should definitely rank higher than Xia Ruojiao. The fact that I chose to coordinate with Xia Ruojiao instead made her feel pretty jealous. I thought about this for a long time, pondering until I finally found a logical explanation. Because you were the one who could deceive the enemy. For example, getting people to start a live stream and making a scene with all that shouting. Things like that helped lower that woman's guard. 3,524. That part was just as important. This point is just as important. Hearing this, Mu Shuran's heart suddenly felt warm, and her irritation was instantly smoothed over. She didn't forget to say proudly, "Xia Ruojiao really is useless. I only stepped out to buy a cake for a second, and she already let someone bully you? We're not playing with her anymore." As soon as she finished, she felt a chill down her spine. Turning around, she saw Xia Ruojiao standing there, smiling without saying a word. She got goosebumps all over. Xia Ruojiao sat down at the table, first glancing at Mu Shuran before speaking. "Sister, I asked for your help to distract them, but that didn't include bad-mouthing me." She looked through the hollowed-out screen at the streetlights outside, then turned to ask me, "Do you and that captain know each other from before? He seems to be paying special attention to you." I gave a hum while scooping cake, replying dazed, yeah. He just came by to take a statement. I didn't really take it to heart. Since the guy was a good person anyway, I wasn't scared at all. Xiao Yao, seeing me like this, felt a bit helpless. She turned to caution Mu. Shuran, in the future, if I'm not here, try not to let the boy get involved in stuff like this. His background is very unique. If he actually gets targeted by certain people, it'll be a massive headache. Not to mention, if that Captain Lu Zheng guy sets his sights on the kid, there's no guarantee he won't dig into his past, or even take him to the station for questioning. This was exactly why she took the credit for everything earlier. Mu Shuran, unwilling to be outdone, frowned and snapped back, I don't need your lecture. I know what to do. Mu Shuran, unwilling to be outdone, frowned and snapped back. But as soon as she turned her head, several phone cameras were pointed straight at her face. A group of rich heirs, having just finished their statements, swarmed over, looking at her with pure idolization. Young Mistress Mu, you're freaking legendary. You just stepped in and cracked a major case. Breaking news that even the media couldn't dig up. And we just live streamed it directly from the scene. It's insane, look. The viewer count in our live stream room is absolutely skyrocketing. Look at those fans who were calling you a bully earlier. Now they're all praising you as a heroic girl. Wise and totally badass. At this rate, when the wilderness survival training starts in a few days, young Mistress Mu will definitely be the most deserving team leader. If anyone objects, I'll fight him myself. Everyone was competing to flatter her, kissing her ass so much that Mu Shuran felt like she was walking on air. The fans in the live stream also shifted their perspective on these trust fund babies because of this, feeling that rich people could do good deeds too. In short, it was a win-win for everyone. By the time the police finished their investigation and completely cleared out of the sales office, outside, a middle-aged man came rushing over. Jia Ruojiao was shocked to see him and stood up to greet him. Uncle Nguyen, aren't you supposed to be on a business trip? Why are you back already? The CEO of Pengcheng Real Estate. Wang Guodong rushed over and grabbed her shoulders, his face still filled with panic. Something like this happened to you. How could I just sit still? I just rushed back from another province. How are you? You're not hurt, are you? Jia Ruojiao shook her head, then turned to introduce Mu Shuran. I'm fine, uncle. The other party didn't even touch me. I also had Mu Chen with me. Today, I mainly came with him to buy a house. So we just happened to stumble into this case. These words were clearly a subtle hint. Wang Guodong immediately looked at me and smiled, reaching out to ruffle my messy hair. He happily said, well then, little Chen is truly my lucky star. If it weren't for you, this residential area of mine would have turned into a drug den. Let's go. What kind of house do you want to buy today? I guarantee I'll make you satisfied. After that, Ruan Guodong personally drove me in an electric cart around the urban area, visiting each unit in person to pick a house. I stood in front of a villa with a swimming pool, lingered for a long time, then turned to ask Ruan Guodong how much this one cost. Seeing my little old man act, while asking for the price, Ruan Guodong burst out laughing. He couldn't help but chuckle and pat my head, generously saying no money needed. Well, this house is my gift to you. I looked up at him in confusion. A gift for me? Why? Ruan Guodong glanced at Xia Ruojiao nearby. She gave him a slight smile. Ruan Guodong leaned down, looked at me and explained, because without you, I would have lost much more money than this. So this is a thank you gift. Just take it. This was the first time in my life I'd received a thank you gift, let alone a house worth tens of billions of dong. With Uncle Ruan Guodong there, in less than an hour, the house went from title transfer to being handed over. All the procedures were completed. Holding the freshly issued red book in my hand, my household registration was also finished. Inside that small red book, only my name appeared. Although I really wanted to add Grandpa's name, I heard that once someone passes, they're removed from the registry. So I just set up a wooden tablet in the yard, treating it as if he had moved in with me. Before leaving Uncle Ruan, Guodong looked quite regretful. I really should have had a meal with everyone, but the project in the other city is rushing me too much. I guess I'll have to wait until next time to treat our adorable little friend here. By the way, I heard from young Mistress Mu that you're also studying at Manadan Elementary. My son Jingcheng also goes there. I hope you two get a chance to become good friends. Jia Ruojiao knew that him being able to return even for a bit wasn't easy. Hearing this, she smiled and nodded. I'll go pick up Jingcheng after school tomorrow, and let the two of them get to know each other then. Ruan Guodong patted her shoulder, a flicker of gratitude appearing in his eyes. After seeing his car off, the three of them returned to the luxury villa. Mu Shuran walked around, and after one lap, she couldn't help but click her tongue. Talk about a tycoon developer, he's seriously generous. Jia Ruojiao didn't comment on her choice of words, only praising Uncle Ruan as a very magnanimous person. That's the reason why his business keeps growing bigger and stronger. Feeling a bit choked up, Mu Shuran pursed her lips and flopped down onto the sofa. But even so, there's no need to exploit a child's connections. If he finds out Mu Chen isn't a young master of the Mu family, won't he be pissed off, you? Hearing this, Xiao shook her head and sighed softly. This has nothing to do with Mu Chen's status. Uncle Ruin's son Jingcheng has a very introverted personality. I've heard his father mention it a few times. It seems the boy isn't very happy at school. He probably saw that Mu Chen has a steady personality, so he wanted to ask our little brother to look after him a bit more. Mu Shuran felt like she was joking. Mu Chen himself is just a little kid, so what could he possibly look after? Jiao disagreed with her point of view. Mu Chen is much more badass than you imagine. On this point, Mu Shuran couldn't refute it. Whether it was fighting back against the thugs at the mall or seeing through the drug concealment, she truly couldn't have done any of it herself. The two of them sighed, turning their heads to look out the floor-to-ceiling window at the thin figure standing seriously by the swimming pool. Ever since viewing the house earlier, the boy seemed particularly interested in this pool. After receiving the house, he didn't even check the interior decor, but just kept wandering around the water's edge like that. Mu Shuran couldn't contain her curiosity, craning her neck to ask, "Tell me, what on earth is he looking at? Is there gold underwater?" Xiao shook her head, also not quite understanding the boy's actions. Then before the two of them could reach a conclusion, the water surface suddenly splashed everywhere. The two young women in the living room froze for 2 seconds, then simultaneously shouted, "Holy crap," and bolted upright, pushing open the window to fish the person out. By the time they finally managed to pull the boy up, he had swallowed a belly full of water. Mu Shuran patted the boy's back to help him throw up the water. He choked on while also being quite spooked herself. "You don't know how to swim? Why'd you just jump straight down?" Got a death wish. Xiao couldn't understand it either. Her face darkened as she wanted to take back the steady compliment. I had vomited most of it out, then turned my head to stare at the water again, with an expression that looked like I wanted to try again. This time, Mu Shuran realized I wanted to learn. With my soaking wet little face, I gave a nod. Mu Shuran lightly tapped my forehead. "I'm about to be worried to death by you. Why didn't you say so? Sooner Xia Rohiao and I can both teach you. Did you think you could just jump in, drink a few gulps of water, and magically learn it? Are you stupid or what?" I just stood there dazed because in my head, I had absolutely no concept of being taught. In the village, there was only a very shallow stream. Back when I was little, the other kids in the village said if I wanted to learn to swim, I had to learn how to hold my breath first. So they held my head down under the stream water. In the winter, the surface had a thin layer of ice. I was so cold my head throbbed with pain. And in my dazed state, I swallowed a lot of water. After that, I actually could hold my breath for a very long time. So I always thought that was how you learned to swim. But today, Mu Shuran and Xia Ruojiao told me it wasn't like that at all. The two girls felt that since their clothes were already wet anyway, they shouldn't waste the opportunity. They started teaching me swimming postures on the deck first. Then she helped me into the water to practice arm strokes. The horizon gradually turned a shade of orange-red, and the sunset gilded the water surface with a shimmering gold. As ripples danced across the water, I had just managed to learn the doggy paddle, struggling to keep my little head up while kicking, looking at my happy and excited little face and my sparkling eyes. The two girls swimming alongside to protect me also broke into smiles. "Great job, Ititi. You're a fast learner. Next, I'll teach you the freestyle. Don't teach him so fast. He needs to master the basics first. I know, quit nagging." I struggled my way to the edge of the pool, clinging to the white ceramic tiles. I turned back to look at the two of them bickering, my dark eyes filled with a sense of novelty. This was the first time I felt that learning to swim wasn't painful at all. That evening, after the three of us ate at a restaurant, Mu Shuran finally took me home. The moment we stepped through the door, Mu Jingchuan jumped up from the living room sofa and excitedly asked his sister, "I heard you took him to deposit some money. Does he really have that much cash?" Mu Shuran saw how hyped he was and knew exactly that he'd found out and was eyeing it. "My money?" And I suddenly felt disgusted. She rolled her eyes and said, "Whether he has money is none of your business." Getting the cold shoulder, Mu Jingchuan curled his lip in annoyance. Mrs. Mu awkwardly tried to play peacemaker. "Shuran, Jingchuan is just curious. Did getting the household registration done go smoothly today? What took you so long?" Mu Shuran could hear the probing in her voice, and she answered dismissively with a trace of disgust. "It went fine. School is starting soon. So shouldn't we send the boy to the old master's place? Even though he really wants to live with me, I think it's better if he moves out a bit early." If this had been before, Mrs. Mu would have surely jumped for joy and agreed with both hands. But now she gave a somewhat strained smile and said hesitantly, "School is about to start. It'll be more convenient to go from this house. Besides, Jingchuan staying with Mu Chen would give them company. How about we wait a bit longer before he moves?" Ever since learning I wasn't her blood relative, Mrs. Mu truly didn't harbor any more malice toward me. But very quickly, she cooked up a different scheme. She wanted Mu Jingchuan to build a good relationship with me. then have the two of us live at the old master's place together to get on his good side. That way, they could get a bigger share of the inheritance later. Mu Jingchuan had also been coached beforehand, so he completely changed his attitude. He walked over trying to grab my hand. Don't worry, bro. When school starts, I'll protect you. As long as everyone knows you're my big brother, no one will dare bully you. I dodged his touch, having zero interest in the petty clashes of these elementary school brats, and headed straight upstairs. Downstairs, Mu Jingchuan was so frustrated he almost cried. Mom, look at him. The next day was September 1st, the official start of the school year. To prevent Mu Jingchuan from tagging along, Mu Shuran dragged me out of the house early. The first thing she did once we got into the car was stuff a carton of milk into my hand. Drink your milk so you can grow big and tall. Swimming yesterday drained too much of my stamina. After finishing the milk, I ate 3 buns in one go. Seeing Mu Shuran sprawled out with her limbs everywhere, scrolling through her phone, then looking at the chauffeur driving in the front seat, I asked, don't you know how to drive? Xia Rojiao already knows how to drive. Mu Shuran bolted up indignantly, thumping her chest to firmly assert that she was still young. Your sister Mu Shuran is still a minor. Okay, Xia Rojiao is a total fraud. She looks gentle and harmless, but behind everyone's back, she's into drinking and smoking everything. You should hang out with her less. I really didn't expect that. Recalling Xia Rojiao's pro-driving skills, I realized you truly can't judge a book by its cover. Mu Shuran felt that if she didn't achieve some kind of success soon, her little brother would end up siding with someone else. But don't worry, during the military training at the start of this school year, I'm definitely taking first place. I had no concept of what military training was. I just thought for a moment, then reminded her that it could be very dangerous. Mu Shuran immediately felt her spirits lift. She ruffled my little head and giggled. Are you worried about me? Relax, in an elite school like ours, the students' lives are worth more than gold. They wouldn't dare let us take any risks, unless someone goes looking for trouble. I nodded, half understanding, since I'd never experienced it before anyway. I didn't say anything more. At the international elite school, the elementary and high school sections aren't in the same spot, but the distance isn't considered far. Mu Shuran left the house early, specifically to help me get used to the school environment first. Unexpectedly, as soon as we got out of the car, we ran into Xia Rojiao. Xia Rojiao was standing next to a Rolls Royce, leading a little boy by the hand, waving at us with a bright smile. Mu Chen, young Mistress Mu. What a coincidence. Mu Shuran's eyes were full of annoyance as she pulled me away. Seriously, she's like a ghost that won't leave. Xia Rojiao took a few quick steps to catch up, leaning down with gentle eyes to introduce us. Chen Chen. This is Uncle Ruan's son, Ruan Jingcheng. He's in the same class as you. I hope you two can get to know each other. Jingcheng, don't be afraid. This is Mu Chen. He's a good kid. I looked up at the boy who was shrinking back in fear, although he was dressed sharply just like Mu Jingchuan, looking every bit like a young master. His demeanor and gestures seemed very timid, but the moment I reached out my hand, Ruan Jingcheng immediately recoiled and hid behind Xia Rojiao. Mu Shuran had always lacked patience with children. She felt that except for me, every kid was loud and troublesome. Therefore, her tone of voice wasn't exactly gentle. Hey, what's wrong with your kid? I'm not going to hit him. Is there any need to be that terrified? Xia Rojiao called his name twice, but the boy refused to come out for dear life. Jingcheng, what's wrong? Jingcheng also just transferred here last semester. He probably hasn't adapted to the environment at Manadan yet. He's always been very resistant to school. I thought that with Mu Chen as a friend, his mood would improve a bit. I didn't expect the situation to remain unchanged. Mu Shuran didn't sugarcoat her words at all, and immediately led me straight forward. Don't use Mu Chen as your errand boy. The kid isn't a nanny. I followed right behind my dark eyes, following the direction Ruan Jingcheng was looking, and saw someone wearing a neatly pressed suit, a young woman with a very elegant appearance. The woman noticed my gaze, and quickly walked over to introduce herself. Hello everyone, may I ask if this is the new student? I'm Shu Niangxi, the homeroom teacher for class 4-1. I heard a new little friend was transferring in today. I bet it's definitely you. Right, Shu Niangxi looked very delicate, with a friendly smile, carrying a faint, pleasant scent. That wasn't overwhelming at all. She just squatted down like that to talk to me, looking very approachable. However, after staring at her for a long time, I suddenly asked in a crisp voice, "Are you acting in a play too?" Shunianixi was startled and choked on her own saliva. Caw, what did you say? Mu Shuran also looked embarrassed, hurriedly looking down to scold me. What kind of nonsense are you talking? I blinked in confusion, looked at the teacher in front of me and said, Didn't you say it before? That Xia Rojiao looks harmless but is actually sneaky. Xia Rojiao had just walked up. I think they give off a very similar vibe. Just catching up from behind. Xia Rojiao had heard the entire thing, Talk about a single sentence offending two people at once. Mushuran scratched her head and gave a forced laugh. Ha ha ha. You're almost late for class, and since the teacher is here, I'll leave him in your hands then. See you after school? After saying that, she dumped me there and bolted. Xiao Ruojiao looked at her, retreating back speechless, before finally entrusting the two children to Xu Niangxi. She politely said, Miss Zhu, kids don't know any better, so please don't take his words to heart. I'll have to trouble you to look after them. Xu Niangxi gently replied, Ms. Zia, you're being too polite. This is my responsibility. If I can educate these little ones to become someone as excellent in character and learning as you, that would be the greatest honor of my life. You flatter me, Miss Xu. The two chatted for a while before parting ways. Zhao Ruojiao walked toward the car, turning back to look at Xu Niangxi's silhouette, muttering to herself, are we really that similar? In another development, I had arrived at the legendary elite school. Clean synthetic floors, always lined with various posters and artworks, along with clean, bright, and stylish British-style uniforms. Countless multi-purpose classrooms equipped with instruments, computers, painting tools, and so on, compared to that dilapidated school in the border region, which only had exactly 2 classrooms. This place was truly worlds apart. I observed everything very closely, and the other students were looking at me the same way, because I wasn't wearing a uniform. Plus I looked tanned and skinny. Even though the quality of the clothes I wore wasn't bad, I seemed out of place compared to everything here. Right above my head, suddenly, the warm and gentle voice of a woman rang out. Are you scared? I shook my head, not seeing anything to fear. Xu Niangxi's voice wasn't rushed at all. It sounded as smooth as a caressing spring breeze. Is that so? Usually transfer students find it hard to adjust. Because this is an elite school, the students' family backgrounds are generally very wealthy. Even the teachers will compare themselves to one another. In such an atmosphere, looking tanned, dressing poorly, or even just looking too ordinary, or having an accent, will all make others look down on you. She was explaining this dream castle to me, along with its most brutal rules. Then she bowed her head, smiled, and said, But you don't need to worry. Whenever you face difficulties, remember to come find me. I will help you. I felt that what she said wasn't right. If others hate me because of those things, then that's definitely their problem. She should be going to educate those other people instead. But just as I was about to open my mouth, I saw Ron Jingcheng over there wiping away tears. Ron Jingcheng bowed his head, crying very quietly. But big fat tears kept rolling down. His body was even trembling slightly. Xu Niangxi sighed as she patted Ruan Jingcheng's head and said, Jingcheng is facing exactly this situation. Last semester was a very hard time for him. Luckily, he persevered through it. Isn't that right? Ron Jingcheng gave a sob, before slowly nodding his head. Xu Niangxi smiled gently. Her fingers followed through, sliding down to touch Ruan Jingcheng's shoulder. Today, the boy wore a clean shirt, making him look quite thin and fragile. The woman's hand came to a stop right there. I quietly stared at that hand for a long time, frowning slightly with doubt as we reached the classroom door. The school bell hadn't rung yet. Xu Niangxi let Ron Jingcheng go in first, then said to me, Let's wait until class starts to go in. To give everyone a surprise, okay? For now, let's go to the office and hang out for a bit. I'll give you some candy. She used a tone meant for coaxing children, but I didn't want to go at all, because I don't like eating candy given by strangers. Back at the border, there was a greedy kid who ate candy from a passerby and immediately foamed at the mouth. I had a feeling this teacher had that kind of candy too. Xu Niangxi gently persuaded me with an incredibly kind expression. Don't be afraid. Did you forget your sister Sharan? Asked me to take care of you. I thought about it for a moment and figured she was right, so I nodded. But just as I was about to follow her, someone in the classroom suddenly shouted, Moo! Chen right after that. A swarm of brats poured out from the front and back doors, instantly surrounding me as they chatted excitedly. Whoa, is this Mu Chen? The super OP friend who beat up that robber. Yeah, he was so badass back then. Whoosh, 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 he appeared. Just like an armored hero. No way, he's clearly like Neja. The kids were all talking at once, each one excited and curiously observing me, as if expecting me to transform at any second. I recognized a few familiar faces among them. They were the ones I met at the mall. So I looked up and asked the teacher, I already know them, so is there still a need for a surprise? Xu Niangxi's smile stiffened slightly, but she still maintained a friendly front and said, I didn't expect you to be so popular already. In that case, go ahead and go in with your friends. By the time Mu Jingchuan arrived all dressed up and groomed, timing it perfectly, to walk into class and bask in the admiring, envious and worshipful gazes of his classmates, he realized something was off. Everyone was actually crowding around a single desk, and the person sitting behind that desk was me. His classmates called out, Mu Jingchuan Xiaochuan, hurry over here. This guy is hilarious. He's actually never seen Anpanman before. He's never played Transformers either. It's so hard to believe. I bet he's never even collected trading cards. Everyone invited Mu Jingchuan to join the discussion, but Mu Jingchuan's face darkened as he sat down in his own seat. In a bitter tone he said he's from the countryside. Of course he knows nothing. He's never played with anything. He's such a country bumpkin, so I wouldn't bother playing with him. Normally, these kids wouldn't like kids from the country either, thinking they're both tacky and dirty. They'd even take the chance to mock them for fun. But today, as soon as those words were said, they met with collective pushback from the kids. Everyone started defending me. No way. He might not have played Anpanman, but he's just like Anpanman. He can save so many people. We think not playing Transformers is fine. After all, toys can't block bullets. Mu Jingchuan was so choked up with rage he could die. He was so tilted that he kept his face buried on the desk throughout the entire morning self-study session. When recess finally arrived, he got up to go to the restroom. While passing Ruin Jingcheng's desk, he intentionally swiped the pencil case to the floor and even stomped on it a few times to vent before walking away. My seat happened to be in the row behind. I saw Ruan Jingcheng squatting down to pick up his pens, while the students around him continued laughing and joking loudly. Absolutely no one went over to help him. A few people passing by even stepped on his things again. As for Ruan Jingcheng, he was like a mute. He didn't say a single word from start to finish. I felt that he was a bit strange, but I couldn't quite describe where the weirdness was. I didn't go over to help either. After all, picking up pens is just a small thing. It's not life-threatening, so he can do it himself. On my first day of school, getting exposed to the elementary curriculum, I studied very seriously and absorbed it quickly. Usually when the teacher lectured on chapter 1, I would read along very slowly. But once I got used to the pace, in just the remaining half of the class, I could finish reading the entire book in one class period. I even saw some familiar characters. I knew it was English, the language used on that friendly exchange website. Last time, to avoid not recognizing the words later, I had carefully studied the alphabet and spent one period memorizing all the vocabulary. Using so much brainpower in the morning made me hungry, and my stomach was growling before school was even out. My seatmate was a chubby kid who had tons of snacks hidden in his desk, but he was a total hoarder, sneaking bites alone for fear I'd ask for some. If someone doesn't want to share, I'm not thick-skinned enough to beg, but smelling that potato chip aroma only made me feel even hungrier. Suddenly, my desk was nudged slightly. A tiny hand holding a chocolate bar reached back and stealthily placed it on my desk. I looked up at Ruan Jingcheng sitting in front of me as his hand quickly retracted. I blanked for a moment before picking up the chocolate, peeling it and popping it in my mouth. The sweet, fragrant taste immediately spread through my mouth, and my stomach stopped growling. I swung my short legs feeling much happier. I finally waited until school was dismissed. The students gathered in groups and swarmed out of the room. A few friends ran over to invite me. Mu Chen, let's go. Let's head to the cafeteria together. I nodded and started walking out with them. But when I looked back, I noticed Ruin Jingcheng was still sitting silently in his seat. I opened my mouth to ask if he was coming, but I was pulled back by another boy. Don't be friends with Ruin Jingcheng. No one wants to go near that freak. Anyway, he has to go to the teacher's office again in a bit. I turned to look at that boy and asked why he was strange and why he was called a freak. Perhaps because my gaze was so sincere and innocent. The other boy was left speechless. Right then, Mu Jingchuan and a few other boys walked over with their arms around each other's shoulders. Hearing that, he snorted and said loudly, "He's not a freak, but he's definitely a hated snitch. After school, he clings to Ms. Shu for tutoring and then talks trash about us behind our backs. First a freak, now a hated snitch." I frowned slightly, my dark eyes staring intensely at Mu Jingchuan as I seriously asked, "Did you see it with your own eyes?" Mu Jingchuan obviously hadn't. Plus, it was all just rumors anyway. In short, anyone who plays with him is a loser. If you go to the office, you'll end up just like him. Wan Guodong stared blankly at the child before him, completely shaken by my words. A long while later, he snapped out of it, laughing through tears as he happily patted my head. He said that Xia Rojiao had truly made a very wonderful little friend. I'll bring Jingcheng over here in a bit too, so he knows that if he hasn't done anything wrong, he doesn't need to hide. I nodded, feeling that this line of thinking was correct. Soon the investigative officers had searched the classrooms, the office, and even Shu Niangxi's dormitory to find the tools used in the crime. They only needed to take them back for testing to fully convict Shu Niangxi. The other parents, hearing about the inspection, immediately hugged their children tightly, refusing to step forward. After all, if you want to collect evidence, let your own kid go. We aren't going anywhere. Ron Guodong led Ron Jingcheng over, stopping right next to Shu Niangxi. The doctor didn't even mention the possibility of taking her to the hospital for treatment anymore. As long as they ensured she didn't stop breathing, for now it was enough. At first, Ruin Jingcheng was still very terrified, hiding behind his father's back and not daring to show his face. After seeing Shu Niangxi lying motionless with her eyes tightly shut, the boy slowly poked his head out. looking at the person before him with a mix of fear and curiosity. Ruan Guodong patted his son's head, choking back his heartache as he said, Jing Chung, look, Mu Chen already took down the bad person. That friend even saved you at noon, right? Nah. Hey, Ruan Jingcheng looked over at me standing nearby. Seeing me covered in bloodstains like that, he timidly nodded. Ruan Guodong encouraged him further. Look, Mu Chen is even smaller than you, yet he could take down the bad guy. Actually, that person isn't even that scary. Ruan Guodong came from a rural background, unlike those in the upper class, who only focus on face and status. His son had encountered such a despicable incident. The thing he feared most was that a psychological trauma would form, making the boy afraid to face life in the future. I looked at Ruan Guodong's slightly reddened eyes and noticed his hand resting on Ruan Jingcheng's head was trembling slightly. I thought for a moment and then took the initiative to step forward. I handed the rock in my hand to Ruan Jingcheng and spoke up. I used this rock to hit her. I only hit her once. If I'd hit her a few more times, she'd probably be dead. Initially, Ruan Jingcheng was still a bit afraid, but when he remembered the pain he had once endured, he slowly reached out his hand to take the rock. The rock still carried a bit of warmth, a tiny stone that fit perfectly in the palm of his hand, as if he had finally grasped a weapon to protect himself. Ruan Jingcheng bit his lip hard, his pale little face gradually flushing red, as tears fell uncontrollably. Finally, he lost control and rushed forward, hurling the rock with all his might at Chu Niangxi. Get lost, us. You bad person. The emotions bottled up for so long completely exploded. All the darkness, repressed trauma, and desperate pain that he couldn't share with anyone, along with the bitterness of being misunderstood by everyone, were all released in this very moment. Whether drawn in by the boys crying or not, the other terrified children nearby began to follow suit one after another, picking up stones from the ground and hurling them at Chu Niangxi. The doctors and nurses quickly scrambled to the side, only trying to shield her already injured head. As for the rest of her body, they didn't care. A piece of trash like this? Any parent would hate her enough to want her dead. Watching these children vent their rage and pain, they couldn't help but shed tears as well. Once Ruan Jingcheng had vented all his anger, Ruan Guodong finally stepped forward. He hugged the boy and praised Him. You are a very brave child. Jingcheng, you must remember this well. What happened was not your fault. The fault lies with the person who did the bad things. So now that the bad person is punished, we must be brave and start over, okay? The victim is always innocent. They shouldn't have to stay stuck in place for their whole lives because of the crimes of a villain. After Ruan Jingcheng leaned into his father's arms and had a good cry, a flicker of hope gradually appeared in his swollen red eyes. The boy nodded slightly. Heir spoke out about his wish. He wanted to go to school with Mu Chen. Ruan Guodong laughed with teary eyes as he looked at me. In his heart, he was immensely grateful to me and felt even luckier that he could use a house to get to know a little friend like me. I didn't just save Ruan Jingcheng, I also said the words that woke him up, helping the father and son escape their psychological shadow. Later, Xu Niangxi was taken away by the ambulance. If nothing unexpected happens, over a decade of prison food is a total guarantee for her. Meanwhile, the parents who finally understood the situation also changed their attitudes, becoming ready to cooperate with the forensic testing, even going to court to testify. As for the fact that I injured someone, even though I went a bit too hard, since the chief saw I was so young, it was classified as a brave act of rescue. Officer Jen only gave me a symbolic lecture, just a few words before letting it go. Even though your intentions were good, the person you faced was still an adult. In the future, when you face trouble, you still need to find a police officer, okay? Deep down, he probably knew I wouldn't listen. This kid is exceptionally strong-willed, acting on a very specific set of personal principles that won't be easily changed. Furthermore, speaking of danger levels, I was much more dangerous than Xu Niangxi. Fortunately, I didn't have a lethal weapon in my hand at the time. Otherwise, Xu Niangxi definitely wouldn't have escaped with superficial injuries. After the police and ambulance left the school, the students of Class 4A1 were led out of the small woods by the teachers. On the way back to the classroom, not a single student spoke a word. Among them, the one most hit by the news was Mu Jingchuan. After returning to his seat, he was still scratching his head in total disbelief, his mouth constantly muttering, "No way! Miss Xu isn't that kind of person. She's so beautiful. Her voice is so gentle. How could she do that to Ruan Jingcheng? It's not like Ruan Jingcheng is even handsome." A boy at the next desk couldn't stand listening to it anymore and stood up abruptly shouting, "Enough. Just because she's pretty doesn't mean she's not a creep. If she didn't commit a crime, why would the police arrest her? Have you watched too many dramas or is your brain fried?" Mu Jingchuan's face turned pale, then flushed with anger at the retort. Completely unconvinced. "You just want to take Mu Chen's side. The investigation isn't even finished yet. On what grounds can you say Ms. Zhu is a bad person?" Seeing the two about to throw hands, right at that moment, a chubby boy sitting in the back row suddenly burst into tears, Stop it! This kid was usually a total NPC in class, who usually didn't have any friends. Suddenly speaking up left everyone a bit dazed. But under the gaze of the crowd, the boy fiddled with his shirt hem and said with a trembling voice, "Last semester, Mizuku also looked for me. She said I was fat so no one wanted to play with me, and even if my grades were good, it was useless. But she said she had a way to make everyone like me. As long as I was obedient and listened, I was so scared then, because her hand kept sliding under my shirt to feel around. By the end, the boy was sobbing uncontrollably, his voice filled with bitterness and self-blame. When we were in the woods, he didn't have enough courage to speak out about this, or stand up to protect a classmate like I did. But at the very least, he could speak up for me now, so others wouldn't misunderstand me. Now that the truth was out, all the boys were cheering for me. I declare Mu-chun the hero of Class 4A1. He is our guardian deity." Everyone's dislike for Mu Jingchuan grew. Normally, if Mu Jingchuan hadn't always been praising Xunya and Ixai, they wouldn't have been so obsessed. They almost ended up liking a total creep. Mu Jingchuan is supposed to be the young master of the Mu family. How is his judgment of people so trash? Sitting at the front desk, Mu Jingchuan heard this, and his mental state completely collapsed. He immediately clenched his fists aggressively and spitefully wrote the name Mu Chen in his notebook. In his heart, he made a vow. He had to become more famous than me, be more loved by everyone than me. Loved to the point that people would forget he was just the adopted son. I didn't go back to class. Jia Ruojiao took me to buy new clothes, to clean up all the bloodstains. Afterward, we went to a restaurant for a meal with Ron Guodong and his son. Midway through, Mushuran called. The moment she picked up, she started cursing. "Jia Ruojiao, you absolute jerk. How dare you let my brother play spy? Don't you know how dangerous that is? And you didn't even bother to tell me beforehand. Where are you taking him now?" Even through the speaker, I could hear her bossy, dominant tone. Jia Ruojiao knew she was in the wrong, so she didn't talk back. After reading out the restaurant's address, she looked at me, bowing my head to eat soup, and sighed. "You're actually very strong. Sometimes it makes me forget you're still just a child." Sitting on the chair, I slowly raised my eyes to look at her and asked if she was making fun of my height. This question for some reason hit the funny bone of the other three at the table. Jia Ruojiao rarely laughed this hysterically. Only after finally stopping her laughter did she speak, "Ha ha. Sorry, I didn't mean it like that. I just wanted to remind you that there are things that really must rely on adults." I poked at the piece of fish in my bowl with a spoon and said softly, "But adults sometimes can't even protect themselves." Jia Ruojiao couldn't refute those words. Moreover, remembering my past life, she realized she was truly just an outsider. Talk is cheap, so she just patted my head and said gently, "Even though I'm not that talented, whenever you need it in the future, can you try to lean on me a little bit?" Ron Guodong, sitting opposite us, also spoke up, smiling at me and me too. "Today, I'll be thick-skinned enough to adopt you as my godson. From now on, I'll treat you just like Jingcheng, as long as it's within my power. You can always come find me." He could see that I was someone with my own story. Definitely not an ordinary person. But toward me, he also felt genuine affection and admiration. "If you agree, then call me Godfather. I have no father and no mother. I've been an orphan since birth. I once gazed at the lights of 1,000 homes and imagined my own parents. But I could never conjure up a specific image. Sitting before this man, even though he had a very ordinary face, he was willing to stand up and protect his son when bullied, and gently pat the boy's head. I still remember that his hand was very large, very broad, and also very warm. If this is what it feels like to have a father, I agree, Godfather." Mushuran had just pushed open the private room door when she heard her little brat calling someone else father. For a moment, she was completely bewildered. "What's going on? No. Could my identity have been exposed?" Kitse. Luckily, Ruan Guodong explained everything in time. Sharan, for the sake of Pengcheng Real Estate's reputation, reluctantly accepted the situation. In reality, she felt more than a little jealous. So the moment she sat down, she couldn't wait to announce, "I'm the captain for the 12th grade military training this time." I looked at her with a meatball stuffed in my cheek. Not really understanding what that was, the star student Jia Ruojiao next to me explained. "At Manadan School from elementary to high school, whenever a new school year starts, there's a half-month military training program. It includes 2 parts on campus and outdoors. The goal is to improve the students' physical fitness. Among them, the grade captain can earn extra credits, which counts as a bonus for college entrance exams." I widened my eyes, listening intently, but I only understood the part about bonus points. I asked Jia Ruojiao again, "So you lost to Mushuran? You two are in the same grade. Shouldn't you be rivals?" However, hearing that, Jia Ruojiao just smiled. "No, I'm not participating because I don't need bonus points. When the time comes, I'll be fast-tracked into the best university." The excited Mushuran suddenly froze. The atmosphere went dead silent for a moment. I didn't notice the awkward vibe, just nodded and said, then you must be really smart. Hearing that, Mushuran felt even more emotionally damaged. You guys just wait and see. In this outdoor survival session, I will definitely get the highest credit, so. Little Chen, do you believe I'll get top marks? I looked at her, not knowing how to answer. I could only offer the chicken drumstick from my bowl. Are you hungry? Do you want to eat this? Mushuran was both annoyed and frustrated. She grumpily grabbed the drumstick and took a massive bite. At the same time, she felt she absolutely had to lead Team 5 well this time. After eating, the group went their separate ways. When they returned to the Mu household, only Mr. and Mrs. Mu were in the dining room. Mrs. Mu saw her daughter and quickly called her over, saying worriedly, Sharan. Jingchuan locked himself in his room after school. I called him down for dinner, but he said he wasn't hungry. Go upstairs and see what's wrong with your brother. Mushuran didn't have time for that nonsense. She grabbed my hand and led me straight upstairs, saying if he wants to eat, he eats. If not, let him starve. Besides, I only have one younger brother, and his name is Mu Chen. You girl, how can you say such things? Mrs. Mu was furious and intended to scold her more. But the two had already disappeared up the stairs. She could only sit back down, looking at her husband with a worried expression, and said, Bingwen, is it really okay to keep going like this? Look, that boy is wearing new clothes again. Surely Sharan bought them for him. Now Sharan is treating him better and better. If she finds out the truth later, do you still intend to keep him around? The fact that I was overshadowing the other was his biggest concern. Mu Bingwen had also considered this aspect, frowning as he said, if we can't keep him in this house much longer, then we must find a way to get the old master to accept Jingchuan. How about this, I'll arrange a banquet to officially introduce Mu Chen to everyone. What? Mrs. Mu was stunned and immediately cried out in shock. Are you crazy? He's not even our son, say. Why give him an official status? Mu Bingwen held her hand, signaling her to be quiet. Don't be so hasty, he continued to explain. It's just a title, that's all. It doesn't hurt our actual interests. On one hand, it shows the old master our sincerity, that we treat both children equally. By then, at the party we'll let Jingchuan perform his best and shine bright. The old master is a sharp man. He'll naturally see which child is more outstanding. Hearing this, Mrs. Mu finally breathed a sigh of relief. She smiled brightly and said, exactly. Let the old master see that the child we raise ourselves. Jingchuan is far better than an orphan with no parents. He'll definitely prefer Jingchuan. Both husband and wife felt this was a brilliant plan. Soon enough, the news began to spread. Mu Jingchuan practiced every single day and night, wanting to play his best musical piece. On the day of the banquet, on the contrary, I had completely turned into a tech-savvy shut-in. Ever since my battle to fame on the Hacker Alliance forum, I had become a trending sensation. My little anti-tracking program even sold over 100 copies, turning me into a big shot in the domestic hacker scene overnight. Because of that. Lately, Mu Shuren has been riding her little brother's coattails. She joined a hacker esports team and even dragged me into the game to chill with them inside the game's interface. That triple kill just now was fire, right? Check out my smooth combo string. I heard the others bragging through my headset, but I didn't even bother to reply. Mushuran controlled her character to lie, lazily on the grass, her voice in the mic full of complaints. Guys, what's the fun in playing like this? Every time we hit a hard level, you just crack the code and fix the bugs. How is this any different from using hacks? It's trash. If I knew it'd be like this, I wouldn't have played. Sensing her dissatisfaction, the people on the other end felt a bit awkward. Can't help it, man. Who told these games to be so full of loopholes? Whenever we touch one, our professional habit kicks in. Our hands just get itchy. Didn't you ever edit the code when you played before? To that question, Mushuran truly couldn't talk back. Who would have thought? While everyone else was sweating to climb the ranks, the moment they entered a match, they were just playing Spot the Difference. It's deathly boring, seriously, forget it. I'd rather go play ball with my little brother. Mushuran rolled over and sat up. She was just about to quit the game to call me to play ball, when she suddenly heard my clear and incredibly calm voice. It's done. Mushuran was stunned. What's done? The game bug. I dragged them all back into the game lobby and forced a new match to start. I finished the fixes. We can play again. The guys in the group were still a bit skeptical. That's some big talk. The entire source code of the game is extremely complex. Not to mention, it's the company's encrypted source file. Besides the fact that their anti-theft measures are set up so tight, even the game bugs are hidden in the smallest details. Without a workload spanning several months, you wouldn't even dream of finding them. He's only been playing for 2 days and he's fixed it. Must be capping, right? G-E. But when they actually started playing, they discovered that a type of item that used to lag was now smooth as silk. The mobs in levels that were usually an easy clear suddenly wouldn't die no matter how much they were hit. Even a crack in the rock, used for climbing cliffs, had been patched up. What was originally a game with Easy difficulty had instantly skyrocketed to hell mode. I'm dead again. Damn, why is it so hard? Bro, save me. This trash game. I have to fix it. Myself, wait, why can't I break through the firewall? Holy crap, kid, you even patched the holes. In the company's firewall too. The whole squad ended up completely depressed. Mushuran surrendered on the spot. After 2 hours of struggling, she stared at me like I was a demon. I told you to make the game more fun, not to turn it into actual hell. I was holding an original English storybook, looking all soft and obedient under the blanket. I looked up at her, my big clear eyes filled with innocence and confusion. But everyone seems to be having fun. Who exactly is having fun? I pointed my finger at the computer. The number of people logged into the game server has already increased 100-fold. Only then did Mushuran react, turning around to open her laptop and click the game interface. Sure, enough the game that originally had only a few million players had now reached hundreds of millions. At the same time, the phone in her pocket rang frantically with notifications. Taking it out, she realized it was the Hacker Alliance members. The moment Mushuran clicked in, she saw everyone was discussing that. Game, for real, was the game fix done by the little bro? Holy crap, that's insane. Really? You guys have no idea. After the game was modified, it's probably a total bloodbath out there now, right? Mushuran scrolled through the messages one by one, learning that the DK Game Company initially had its source code stolen and had issued a notice asking all users to stop using it. But shortly after, users started leaving comments saying the game not only worked perfectly fine, but it was smoother than before and way more fun, as more and more people confirmed this. Some curious souls even introduced this game to professional esports players. The result, after logging in for less than 2 hours, they were all completely wrecked. This battle by the great god directly caused the game to explode and go viral. The mythical hack game, which was originally unknown, now had registered users in the hundreds of millions. The DK company, seeing they were profiting, and that no one was coming to claim a share of the pie, confusedly withdrew their police report. They even directly changed their reasoning to a technical upgrade. The plot twist was so hilarious that it sparked countless heated discussions across social media platforms. This time, the Economic Crimes Division got played. Everything was going fine. A case of hackers stealing company secrets ended up turning into an introductory invitation. Haha, but they deserved it. In the end, we even busted a drug case. Don't even ask, this face-slapping feeling is so satisfying. Lu Jung sat at his desk drinking tea, while listening to his team members gossip. Vividly. It felt like everyone had been a bit too free lately. It seems, previously when they solved a case, if it didn't take 1 or 2 months, they basically couldn't find a single lead, not to mention distant matters. Just look at the kidnapping of the city's rich heir. The victim had already been taken to the border. Originally, they were getting so many complaint calls that their whole bodies were going numb. But in the blink of an eye, the person was brought back completely unharmed. Then there's the jewelry store robbery. In such a large shopping mall, if the criminal had fired a random shot and injured just one person, it would have been a disaster. It would have caused them endless trouble. Yet in the end, there were 0 casualties. And the drug case, the unethical teacher case, every single one was a massive headache. But the efficiency in solving them was shockingly high. He carefully considered the underlying cause and discovered a very important person. In the border case, I remember that boy was also a victim. Did the boy do anything in that case? The team member who was chatting turned his head to think. Probably not, Captain. That kid, Don't tell me you think those kids escaping was because he saved them. He's only 10 years old. How could he be that god tier, Lu Jung wanted to say. In this past half month, haven't you witnessed Mu Chen's miracles yet? But thinking it over, he felt maybe he was being too naive and had entered a blind spot. Anyway, keep an eye on the hackers' activities. I heard they have a new leader lately. Can't rule out the possibility of them causing another big scene. Everyone get ready. Yes, Captain. Meanwhile, the person who had just become the center of attention, me, was still completely unaware. As an administrator, to protect the forum from being infiltrated, I actually caught a few viruses attempting to attack, all originating from abroad. Mushuran received the news, grabbed her laptop, and ran to find me, her face showing a bit of seriousness as she said, "Just now, the people from DK sent a private message warning me to be careful. Some foreign game companies have hired hackers to try and uncover your identity." While finishing up the firewall setup, I asked her why. Business wars nowadays are just as fierce as actual combat with live ammo. Mushuran leaned against the doorframe, acting all mysterious and profound. "Little brother, you still haven't seen the world. If they dig up your identity, they'll probably try to tempt you with money." I finished typing the final patch, looking up at her blankly. "Tempt me how?" "By offering a better salary and benefits, of course. Giving you tons of cash, a foreign green card, and stuff like that." Mushuran counted on her fingers. Then, seeing I had no reaction from start to finish, I finally just gave a simple "oh" It meant I wasn't going anywhere. Manager. Mushuran also felt that compared to those things, a small piece of cake was more tempting to me. But DK is a huge company. The one who messaged you is their CEO, saying he really wants to get to know you. Do you want to give him a reply? Replying when someone messages is basic. Politeness. I didn't refuse, and very sincerely. Message them back through the system. Your other games have a lot of bugs. I suggest you fix them. Standing nearby. Mushuran, who was drinking water, immediately spat it out. This answer really rubbed salt in their wounds. A domestic game company famous for exquisite graphics and fun level-based gameplay. And now he was being roasted by a kid whose feet couldn't even touch the floor. Luckily, the DK CEO has a pretty good temperament. Instead of getting triggered or salty, he actually messaged back and forth with me for a bit. Mushuran was busy cleaning the messy blanket, then turned back to see I had already closed the chat. She casually asked, "Finish talking. You didn't get scammed, did you?" Scammed? No. He tried to bribe me with money, but I turned him down. I shook my head, noticing the blanket on the bed had been changed to gray. Mushuran nodded about to praise me for doing a good job. When she heard me continue, he said he wanted a more formal introduction, so I invited him to the banquet. Wait, what? Mushuran's expression went blank for a second. I tilted my small head. Is something wrong, sis? He said he wanted to be formal, and I thought the banquet was the most formal place. Mushuran knew my logic wasn't technically wrong, but wouldn't that expose my secret identity? If it's the CEO of DK, it should be fine, right? She paced around the room anxiously. After circling a few times, she suddenly stared me down and said, "Tomorrow I'm taking you to buy a fit. If you're meeting a big boss, you need the best gear. My little brother can't be looked down on by anyone." Even though this banquet had been planned several days ago, neither Mushuran nor I really took it to heart. I was just cluelessly kept in the dark, not knowing anything at all, while Mushuran didn't believe a single word of her parents' lies. She originally planned to play the role of my full-time bodyguard that day, making sure no one had the chance to pull any tricks. But now the situation had changed. Early the next morning, she dragged me out of the house. As we passed through the living room, we saw Mu Jingchuan practicing with Mrs. Mu by the floor-to-ceiling window. She grabbed a slice of bread and popped it in her mouth, then took 2 bottles of milk and waved to her mom. "I'm heading out." As soon as the words left her mouth, they were already long gone. Mu Jingchuan wanted to give chase, but wasn't fast enough to turn around. He stomped his feet in frustration. "Mom, look, sis is taking him out again." At home, those two are glued to each other all day. And it's still the same now? The banquet is starting soon. Could she be trying to prepare something for him? Mrs. Mew kept her eyes closed while doing her stretches, her face completely unbothered as she said, "No rush. They can't pull any tricks, so just relax." Mu Jingchuan was skeptical, but seeing his mother's confident and winning posture, he finally sat back down. These past few days, he had undergone special training day and night, all just to shine brilliantly at the banquet. He absolutely wouldn't allow any mistakes. Meanwhile, Mushuran had just set off, in a very good mood, rubbing Mu Chen's little head, like she was looking at a panda in the zoo. She muttered, "Drink more, so you can grow up faster, and while you're at it, make that smart brain of yours even sharper." I finished 2 bottles of milk, but my stomach still felt empty. I could definitely keep eating. So, at the next intersection, Mushuran got out to buy me some street-side Chinese pancakes. When the steaming bag was handed over, she pulled out her phone, intending to pay, only to find a notification popping up on the screen. "Your bank card has been frozen. Payment cannot be completed." What's the meaning of this? She was stunned for a second before switching to the banking app, only to find her supplementary card had been deactivated. This card was linked to Mu Bingwen's account. It was obvious who locked her card. Is he crazy? Mushuran stood by the roadside and immediately called Mu Bingwen's office. As it turned out, the secretary picked up and announced that her father was in a meeting and couldn't take the call. Intentional. This was absolutely intentional. In all these years, no matter how pragmatic Mu Bingwen was, he rarely froze her allowance on a whim. Is today's drama actually aimed at me? My brain isn't slow at all, so I immediately understood the key to this situation. I could see my parents' hearts were smaller than a needle's eye. Talking about it just brings more shame. But right now, all my cards are unusable. Even the money I earned from writing my own software can't be withdrawn. Feeling around her pockets, she didn't even have enough to buy a single pancake. She gritted her teeth and sent a message to her group of party friends. "This young lady is broke. Someone come pay for me." Early in the morning, those rich kids who lived for the nightlife were still tucked under their blankets. Only a few replied to tease her. "Mu's eldest miss is out of cash. Did the sun rise in the west? Which street? Are you stranded on J?" Mushuran snapped back, "Cut the crap. Pancake stall on East Avenue. Whoever can make it, get your asses over here fast. My little brother is waiting for breakfast." After sending that, she pretended to check her phone, standing perfectly still in place. As a prestigious young lady, If word got out that she was a dine and dasher, it'd be over. The stall owner kept staring at her, terrified she was going to bolt without paying. But looking at the way she was dressed, she didn't actually look like someone lacking money, so they just kept their eyes glued to her. Just when Mushuran felt like she was about to have two holes stared through her, the roar of engines echoed from the end of the street, right after a dozen supercars parked in a row, along the curb. Haha, Miss Mu. I can't believe you are actually here. A crowd of people swarmed over, and someone immediately ran to pay the bill. Mushuran glanced at them and said suspiciously, "Why are you guys up so early? Usually, when I'm in trouble, you guys aren't this enthusiastic." 4,998. Today, a single pancake attracted all of you. Hôm nay một cái bánh xèo đã thu hút các cậu đến rồi. Seems pretty sus. The crowd she questioned just started laughing and joking around. They didn't intend to hide anything, and spoke frankly. Actually, we're just curious about your little brother. We wanted to see him with our own eyes. Heard he's a real standout in elementary school. Last time on Lisa's stream, you were very protective of him. President Mu is even throwing a special banquet just to officially introduce him. So we wanted to get a sneak peek to satisfy our curiosity. Mushuran looked at their gossiping faces, gave a speechless sigh, and decided to use them as free labor. Well then, you guys can be my ATMs for the day. Hearing that, none of them objected. They crowded around Mushuran and ushered her to the cars. Engines roared as they sped straight toward the bustling city center. In the car, I munched on my slightly cooled pancake, not asking questions about the massive convoy. Leading the way, they arrived at several high-end tailor shops for men. As soon as they stepped inside, the girls started picking out outfits for me. Look at this mess you guys picked out. My brother is only 10 years old. How can he wear something this flashy? And these leather shoes, forget it. Mushuran's wallet might have been empty, but her attitude hadn't diminished one bit. She disgustedly pushed aside the clothes they chose and told the shop's designer to custom make shoes for me instead. After I was led into the fitting room, the rest of the group sat in the lounge area, starting to yawn repeatedly. Among them was a girl in a black shirt, with her buttons not even properly done. She exuded a lazy vibe the moment she sat down, casually tapping the floor with the tip of her shoe. She said to Mushuran, "Why go through all that trouble? Just pick the most expensive stuff. I'll cover the bill." Hearing that, the others clapped and gave a thumbs up to the girl. Miss Keen is still the most generous one. Kin Muyue rested her chin on her hand and smirked. Her already stunning features looked even more charming. "Can't help it, I'm so poor that all I have is money." After saying that, she threw a flirtatious wink at the handsome male employee nearby, making his face turn beet red and his heart race. Just as she was about to exchange contact info with the guy, Shuran, who was standing next to her, gave her a light kick. "Stop messing around," she said. "It won't be good if Mu Chen sees this later." Hearing that, Chin Muyue tilted her head to glance at her. Her tone had a hint of a smile but felt a bit cold. "I never expected the great Miss Mu to be such a good sister. Buying a house last time, buying clothes this time. The sibling bond is really deep, huh?" Mushuran found the words grating, but she knew Chin Muyue had some issues in her heart, so she could only lower her voice to advise her. "You should stop being so cynical all the time. For this upcoming military training, I'll lead you to get the highest credits. We'll get into the best university together. Don't you really love painting?" Kin Muyue's movement stiffened. She turned her head, saw the serious expression on her friend's face, and suddenly leaned back against the other end of the sofa. She scoffed, "This kind of determined young girl speech. Yeah? You should save it for the stage. What best university, huh? What's the point of graduating after those people finish school? Won't they still end up working for me?" Kim Muyue said this with absolute confidence. The Chin family was a super wealthy clan, not just in this city, but they were famous nationwide. Furthermore, they were an enterprise passed down from the Republic era, with immense power and resources. Even if Chin Muyue spent her life burning money for fuel, she probably couldn't burn it all. But being born into such a family also came with a sense of tragedy, and that was the inevitable business marriage. Kim Muyue's parents were both victims of marriage, with absolutely zero feelings for each other. Ever since she was born, each of them has played their own games. Right now, they both have other kids and families outside. The reason she became close with Mushuran was because she felt they were very similar. Both were basically outcasts. But now, she suddenly realized Mushuran seemed to have changed, and this change made her particularly uncomfortable. "Muyue, I'm being serious." Even after being mocked like that, Mushuran still wanted to give her friend a pull-up, saying earnestly, "Recently from my little brother, I've learned a lot of things. No one's life is worth throwing away, and we certainly can't give up on ourselves. Just think it over carefully." As she finished, the curtain in the other room was pulled back. The designer led me out by the hand. Mushuran patted Kin Muyue's shoulder, stood up naturally, and walked over. I was wearing a small, well-tailored dark blue suit, with a sophisticated dark bow tie at the collar. It maintained a child's innocence, while exuding a touch of calm composure. Did your skin get a bit fairer? Plus you've grown taller, though. Mushuran circled around me, suddenly noticing something she'd missed. I looked into the full-length mirror in front of me. It's true I wasn't as tanned anymore. My face was starting to fill out too, no longer looking frail and sickly. As for the height, I hadn't grown at all. It was just the shoes, seeing me honestly shake my head. With a look of resentment in my eyes, Mushuran couldn't help but burst out laughing. She reached out to rub my head, comforting me, "You'll grow taller later. Don't rush. The adult world has too many troubles. If you grow up too fast, you'll regret it." Hearing that, the group of rich young masters crowded around, teasing her. Who knew that, after not seeing Miss Mu for a few days, she'd start spouting philosophy? And she even knows how to lecture her little brother. "How about taking your brother out to play with us today?" Mushuran shot them a glare. She curled her lips and said, "Go play somewhere else. Stop talking nonsense to my brother." After that, she took a few more looks and told the designer, "We'll take this one." "Yes, ma'am. Do you have a membership?" As the staff stepped forward to ask, Qin Muyue stepped up and handed over a black card. "Let me gift this outfit to him. The adorable little brother of the great Miss Mu." Qin Muyue didn't even bother to ask about the price. While speaking, she just looked at me with smiling eyes and said, "I wonder if I give you a gift, could I also get a thank you sister in return?" This sounded like a transactional exchange. Mushuran frowned, already looking a bit displeased. "What's wrong? Can't I want a little brother to dote on just like the great Miss Mu does?" Qin Muyue slowly took a step forward, refusing to back down. She continued to smile at me. "Cute little brother, just call me sister once, and I'll buy you whatever you want. I have tons of money, way more than any of them." At this point, everyone around could see the situation was going south, but no one dared to step in and stop it. If Mushuran was just rebellious, then Chimuyue was a total wildcard. Once she loses it, no one can control her. Mushuran's face went completely cold, her fists clenching tight. They were both Silver Spoon elites, young ladies born with everything. No matter how close they were, she couldn't stand this kind of provocation. However, just as she was about to throw a punch, a small hand pulled her back. I stood by her side, tilting my small face up to look at Qin Muyue. I let out a clear, crisp voice and called out, "Sister Muyue?" "Sister." Qin Muyue happened to meet my gaze. When she saw those pitch-black, incredibly calm eyes, she was slightly stunned. The child's eyes told her that calling her sister was completely voluntary, not forced at all, and without any hidden motives. It was just a simple way to address her. In her heart, she didn't feel the thrill she expected from her prank. At this moment, Qin Muyue slowly pulled back the smile on her lips. Instead, she felt even more annoyed this wasn't fun at all. She took a step back, turned around, stretched, and walked toward the door. She called out to the group, "The weather is so nice. How about we head to the track for a few laps?" Yo. The others seeing there wouldn't be a fight quickly chimed in, "Sounds good, let's go." "Is Miss Mew coming along?" "I'm not going." Mushuran flatly refused, her face ice cold. Right now her mood was even worse than Qin Muyue's. She squatted down, staring at me accusingly. "Why did you call her sister? You've never called me that before." This time she was truly sulking. Qin Muyue leaned against her car outside the door, turning her head with interest to watch the drama. She wanted to see how the arrogant Mushuran would fall at the hands of a little brat, who was still wet behind the ears. "Sister," seeing her that angry. I thought for a moment. I decided to mimic her usual behavior, reaching out my hand to rub her head. "Because you're even more childish than I am." I said it with a straight face. A burst of laughter erupted from outside the door. Everyone was clutching their stomachs laughing, including Qin Muyue. After speaking, I looked back toward the door, my gaze landing on Qin Muyue. With clear and bright eyes, I said, "Sister Muyue is your friend. Is it wrong for me to call her that? Because she's your friend?" That's why I called her sister. In an instant, both Mushuran and Qin Muyue were stunned by those words. Among the rich kids in the circle, people usually only consider each other drinking buddies. Rarely does anyone think they have genuine feelings. But in reality, Mushuran had always considered Qin Muyue a friend. Being called out like that by a kid out of the blue, she felt a bit shy. "Fine, whatever, have it your way. But you have to call me sister too." Like without adding any words in front of it, she stood up and rubbed my head again, turning her head to lock eyes with Qin Muyue. Both of them looked a little awkward. Qin Muyue looked away, suddenly letting out a soft chuckle. I kind of get why Mushuran dotes on this little brother so much now. "Hey, Mushuran, wanna go racing?" She turned back and called her by her full name, but her attitude was a few degrees more sincere than before. To ease the awkwardness, Mushuran shouted back, "You're on. Just wait until I crush you on the track." After I finished changing and stepped out, I saw there was a natural racing track here. Mushuran had actually bought it and renovated it into a professional circuit. Whenever she's free, she basically lives here. This was my first time seeing so many cars. lined up together on the road. The mountain slopes on both sides were built into stands. Mushuran led me to the high platform with the best view, pointed at the cars zooming past and asked, "Do you know how fast that is that? Speed is even faster than criminals crossing the border." "Well, isn't it exciting?" I nodded. "I've actually sat in the cars of those escaping criminals before. Sometimes I even hid in the trunk to track them. When the car goes too fast and hits a bump, it's very uncomfortable. Your heart also pounds incessantly." Seeing me staring intently at the cars, Mushuran thought I liked them. She immediately wanted to show off. "Wait here, I'll go for 2 laps to blow your mind." But I shook my head and said seriously, "It's very dangerous. It's not like you're trying to escape. I don't understand why you have to drive so fast." Mushuran really enjoyed my concern. "It's fine. I play here all the time. The equipment is very safe." At the same time, she grew even more eager to try. The call of sister had fueled her competitive spirit, so she wanted to snag a victory on the track, to show me who the most badass big sister really was. But just as she poked her head out to find Chinmuyue, she saw her down below the stands, seemingly getting into an argument with someone. Mushuran frowned, turned back and told me, "Wait here for me. I'm going down to check it out." With that, she sprinted off with her long legs. Because I was small and lacked the height, I couldn't see the situation below, only catching bits and pieces of voices. So I left the spectator seats, walked down the aisle by the railing, and poked my head out. I saw Chinmuyue facing off against a group, about 7 or 8 people. They were all fit guys in their 30s, covered in tattoos, with very fierce gazes. One look and you knew they weren't to be messed with. Mushuran pulled Chinmuyue's arm, preventing her from going over there. "Muyue, don't be impulsive. This is your turf. If you don't want to race, no one can force you. Just have someone kick them out." Before Chinmuyue could even open her mouth, a burst of laughter erupted from the opposite side. "Not racing is fine, but from now on, the reputation of this Tangdu track is trashed. Turns out, the legendary Miss Chin, who supposedly takes all bets, is just a brat wet behind the ears, who only dares to race when she's sure to win." The bald leader was incredibly arrogant. Chinmuyue's face darkened instantly. She brushed off Mushuran's hand, stepped forward and said, "Who says I don't dare? Fine, let's race. 350 million around. Today, I'm going to make sure you guys lose every single cent before you leave." At this, the smirk on the bald guy's face widened. "Since Miss Kin is so decisive, how about we play 1 round to settle it all? How 1 round for 35 billion? But Miss Kin must take the wheel herself." Chinmuyue didn't expect the opponent to have this requirement. But since they've pushed her to the edge, she's not backing down. Without a second thought, she nodded. "Fine. But if you lose and don't cough up the cash, don't even dream of leaving this track alive." She turned toward the garage to mobilize her crew. Mushuran chased after her, grabbing her shoulder and pulling her back. She said angrily, "Are you crazy? Can't you see? They came here specifically to start trouble. They're clearly targeting you. What if something happens to you out there?" Chinmuyue turned to her, maintaining her reckless attitude with a smile. "If something happens, it happens. What can I do? This life of mine? If they want it, they can come and take it. I don't give a damn." Mushuran was nearly fuming with rage. But remembering how she used to be just as self-destructive as her friend, she suddenly felt a massive headache. I circled around the stands. In a blind spot of the walkway, I saw those hulking men. Among them, a blonde guy snickered and said to the bald leader, "Boss, I didn't expect this brat to bite after just 2 sentences. Looks like taking her out will be easy." The bald guy took a drag of his cigarette, smirked, and said, "These rich brats have no brains. They just got lucky with their reincarnation." The blonde guy grinned, crushing a cigarette butt under his foot, his eyes filled with the cruelty and malice. "Exactly. Otherwise, her old man's goons wouldn't. This time, it's best to crash her so she's paralyzed, unable to care for herself for the rest of her life. Damn these rich people." The bald guy glanced at him, shook his head in warning. "Best not to risk it. Stick to the plan. Wait until the curve, then ram her through the guardrail. Sending her off the cliff to a totaled car and a dead body is the client's wish. Don't you go acting on your own." The blonde guy scratched his head irritably, finally choosing to compromise. "Ugh, fine, I got it. Wait until that group entered the rest area." I finally stepped out, silently staring in the direction of. They've been at the border for a long time. I can easily recognize those who have blood on their hands. These guys have clearly killed before. Sounds like a professional hit. And the target is Sister Chinmuyue. I looked down at the brand new leather shoes on my feet. Back when we left the shop, Sister Chinmuyue said they looked like the leather shoes of the Little Prince. She thought they suited me, so she swiped her card for them. She even bought me a small suit, the extremely expensive kind. Since that's the case, I should probably repay her right. Having made up my mind, I pulled a compact box cutter out of my pocket. 10 minutes later, Sister Chin Muyue drove her car to the first starting line. This only happened because Sister Mu Shuran finally compromised and let her take the field. Sister Mu Shuran was still uneasy. Leaning against the car door, she warned, "Remember this. Stay in the middle of the track, don't let them get close. Leave any issues to the pro racers. They're the only ones who can dodge the risks. I'll be monitoring the surveillance cameras from here. If there's a problem, I'll alert you via the headset." Qin Muyue was nearly annoyed to death. "I got it. Why are you so long-winded now? You sound like an old lady." She waved her hand, intending to roll up the window. Mushuran gripped the car door tight, refusing to let go, still wanting to say a few more words. Suddenly, the door on the other side opened. A small, thin figure hopped in. Both of them looked over at the same time, completely startled. With eyes wide open, they asked, "What are you doing in here?" I sat in the passenger seat, looking perfectly well-behaved, and said in a calm tone, "I'm protecting and helping you monitor Sister Muyue. I notice she isn't very good at listening to orders." Mushuran's head was throbbing. "Even so, it's not your turn to play the hero. Knowing that once I've decided I'll do it, she could only try to gently coax me. Be a good boy. I'll find someone else to monitor her, okay? Just get out of the car first." However, as much as I sat there, looking obedient, my attitude was equally rebellious. I directly shook my head and refused. "They can't do it. Only I can do it." Mushuran was so frustrated, she felt like she was losing years of her life. Qin Muyue finally understood why her friend had become so long-winded. She looked at the little brat sitting next to her with a smirk, twirled a slightly messy lock of my hair, and asked, "I'm famous for being a reckless driver. Don't go crying your eyes out later, okay?" I reached for the seatbelt and buckled myself in upon hearing that, lifting my dark eyes to look at her. "With me here, you won't be reckless." Qin Muyue was momentarily stunned, not knowing how to respond. But what I said was the truth. No matter how much she toyed with life or how desperate she was, she wouldn't drag a child into a life-threatening situation. Mushuran seemed to understand my intention as well. An indescribable emotion welled up inside her. She gritted her teeth, stared at me, and said, "I know you're trying to protect Sister Muyue, but I can protect my own friend myself. Get out and let me take your place." But I still refused, gripping the seatbelt tightly. I turned my head away, my gaze calmly fixed on the front. Just then, the cars next to us started honking loudly. A blond guy poked his head out of the window and shouted toward us, "Hey miss, if you're scared, go home and drink some milk. Stop wasting everyone's time. It's just one race, and you're already acting like it's a tragic farewell. Are we starting this or what?" Before he could finish, the others started jeering too. Amidst the noisy commotion, Mushuran had no other way to persuade me. She could only reach out and grab Qin Muyue's collar, pulling her close to her face. With reddened eyes, she ordered, "Bring my brother back safely. Do you hear me?" After leaving those words, she let go and quickly ran off to open her laptop, preparing to monitor the entire racetrack. At this moment, the countdown started on the starting screen. All around us, engines began to roar as they warmed up. Amidst the waves of revving engines, Qin Muyue turned to look at the little brat beside her. Muttering one last curse, she also started the engine. "Hold on tight in a bit. If you get tossed out, don't expect me to care." I kept a calm face and nodded in response. As soon as I spoke, the countdown ended. Every car shot forward like an arrow from a bow. Qin Muyue had the fastest start, leading the pack. The wide mountain scenery opening up before her put her in a pretty good mood. She checked the opponents behind her and couldn't help but let out a whistle, then told me, "Hey kid, watch closely as I crush every single one of them. On this mountain track, I am the king." Unfortunately, right after her arrogant boast, Mushuran's voice rang out. Over the car's communication screen, "Cut it out, stop acting tough for me. Drive slower, don't scare my brother." Qin Muyue was speechless, turning the wheel while asking, "Where did you get this masochistic hobby? Why do you like this brat? Who's so naughty and disobedient? He's not even as good as that foster kid at your house. At least that one is sweet-talked and knows what to say." Mushuran's tone was full of disgust. "Shut your mouth and stop with the comparisons." She immediately turned around and started hyping up my good points. "A mortal like you wouldn't understand. While on the road, if he gives any instructions, you better listen to him." Qin Muyue laughed and cursed, "Great. You brother complex freak, are you sick?" She honestly felt her friend was insane, making a professional like me listen to an outsider. And a brat who's still wet behind the ears at that. "Yes, do you think I've lived too long or something?" Mushuran's tone turned cold. "I'm giving you this advice for the sake of your pathetic little life." She was brimming with confidence in Mu Chen. While the two were trash-talking each other, a car ahead of us suddenly overtook. It was the opponent's car. At this moment, Qin Muyue didn't seem to care about winning. Over 3 billion was about to vanish into thin air. She even turned to joke with Mu Chen beside her. "Sister, I'm not even bothering to compete for the win because of you. So you're the one who has to pay this money back." In the comms channel, Mushuran was just about to scold her for being shameless when she heard the boy's clear voice reply, "Okay." Kim Woo-yue was stunned and couldn't help but turned to glance at him. She saw the little boy staring intently at the road ahead with a dead serious expression. In her heart, she felt a sudden surge of curiosity, but then he suddenly spoke up to warn her. "Watch the road, sister. It's dangerous." Kim Woo-yue snapped out of it, thinking she was actually being lectured by a kid. Feeling a bit amused, she slowed down slightly. Seeing the rear of the car about to get hit, she gasped in shock, hurriedly jerking the steering wheel to the side. But the opponent immediately switched lanes to block her. Only then did Chin Woo-yue realize they were doing it on purpose. "Those bastards over the comms." Mushuran simultaneously shouted a warning, "Woo-yue, be careful. The car behind is moving up too. If you get sandwiched at the next turn, you'll be in big trouble." Being blocked from both front and back obstructs the view. During the turn, if the opponent bumps her from behind, she'll be sent flying, both driver and car right over the guardrail. Kim Woo-yue knew this all too well, so she started looking for a way to break the siege, trying to floor it to overtake the car in front. But the opponent stuck to her like glue, refusing to let go. Seeing the curve right before their eyes, the three cars were about to barrel through in a tight sandwich. Kim Woo-yue's palms were drenched in sweat. Suddenly, a youthful, childish voice rang in her ear, "Steer into them." Kim Woo-yue, in her extreme tension, was momentarily stunned. What? She thought she had misheard. But a second later, she heard the child repeat it again. "Steer into them or they're going to ram you." Hearing that, even in such a critical moment, Chin Woo-yue couldn't help but steal a glance at me. She saw me sitting perfectly upright, with the sunlight from the window hitting me, covering my small face, still showing my baby fat, looking incredibly young and innocent. But it was exactly a child like this who could keep a straight face while telling someone to ram a car on a highway. After a brief silence in the comms channel, Mushuran spoke up, "Listen to him." Her voice dropped low, but there wasn't a hint of hesitation. "He won't hurt you, trust him." Kim Woo-yue felt it was absolutely absurd. Was she really about to commit murder? However, right at that moment, the car behind suddenly scraped against them and lunged. Amidst the constant shower of sparks, the rear bumper signaled overheating and was losing control. She cursed, "Are you crazy?" Then, she accidentally glanced at the rearview mirror. For a split second, her eyes met those of the driver behind. It was the blonde guy, who had shouted threats at them at the foot of the mountain. Right now, he seemed to be casually puffing on a cigarette, cold killing intent emanating from his sallow face. Ramming someone to death was clearly no big deal to him. That look gave Chin Woo-yue goosebumps. The fear of death made her freeze for a few seconds. Then she suddenly gripped the steering wheel tight, muttering as if asking, "Really ram them?" Or perhaps she was seeking confirmation from me. I tilted my head to look at her, but didn't give a verbal answer, because I knew she already had her answer. The wind howled past the window, whirling up the fallen leaves on the ground, only for them to be crushed by the speeding wheels into tiny fragments. At the curve, the bald guy in the lead glanced at his rearview mirror, smirking as he told the blonde guy over the phone, "It's almost time. Get ready to," before he could finish. A violent impact slammed into him. The bald guy was nearly sent flying out. He struggled frantically to keep the steering wheel steady. He realized Chin Woo-yue had struck first. While he was still in shock, he looked up to see the guardrail right in his face. Damn it! He immediately jerked the wheel, forcing the rear of the car to drift outward, trying to stop amidst the violent grinding between the bumper and the guardrail. But when he slammed his foot on the brake, the inexplicable loose feeling under his foot made him panic. "What's going on? The brakes are gone." The bald guy, refusing to give up, pumped the pedal several more times, until the rear of the car smashed through the guardrail. He finally realized in utter despair that he was beyond saving. He rolled down the window screaming, out in a hopeless plea for help. Amidst the cold wind on the mountainside, "Help. Help me, save me." In just 2 seconds, tears were already streaming down his face. Meanwhile, the car right behind him accelerated past at the curve amidst the whistling wind, not even glancing back as it escaped the danger zone, and sped away. Through the car window, flashing by in an instant, the bald guy saw the face of a child. The child's dark eyes stared at him calmly, without a hint of fear or even a smile, as if he were composedly seeing him off from this world. He felt like he had seen this child before entering the rest area. At the moment he lit a cigarette, he had glanced back from afar. At that time, the boy was standing right next to their car. So it was him. But knowing the truth now was already too late. The mountain wind howled as the car plummeted to the bottom, letting out a series of deafening explosions. Flames shot up into the sky, forcing all the other cars to come to a halt. Kim Woo-yue parked her car on the pass above. When she opened the door, her limbs were completely weak. She gave an order to the person on the comms. "Mushuran, send people up here." Then she unbuckled her seatbelt and jumped out of the car. At the curve, the blonde guy was lying prone on the ground, screaming toward the foot of the mountain in agonizing pain. Boss, he looked at the car burning down to its frame, knowing full well in his heart that his boss was completely beyond saving. He clenched his fist and slammed it violently against the ground. They were supposed to go out for drinks and girls right after finishing this job, but now everything was ruined. He just couldn't wrap his head around it until he heard footsteps behind him. Turning his head and seeing Chin Muyue, he stood up with bloodshot eyes, rushing toward her in a fit of rage. Damn it, I'll kill you. Chin Muyue was completely caught off guard, her heart still in a state of extreme panic. She had basically zero ability to fight back. She was pinned to the ground with her throat gripped tight, and within seconds she was struggling to breathe, feeling her vision go dark. The racetrack staff tried to rush in to intervene, but they were blocked by the big guy's lackeys. A life for a life, it's only natural. Our boss went down because of you guys, so you're gonna pay with your lives. Their numbers were large and they were incredibly aggressive, looking absolutely murderous. That's right, you killed our boss, so killing you is only fair. Having said that, the lackey tightened his grip even more. A spoiled lady like this didn't require much effort. One good squeeze and her neck would snap. By then the client's money would be split among him and his brothers. At that thought, a cruel expression appeared on his face. But just as he was about to snap Chin Muyue's neck, the blonde guy felt a weight on his back. An arm was also tightening around his neck. Immediately after, a squelching sound rang out and his shoulder flared with agonizing pain. Chin Muyue took advantage of the blonde guy letting go due to the pain and hurriedly scrambled backward. Right after that, she saw me clinging to the guy's back. One of my hands held a box cutter that was buried deep in his shoulder. My strike was both fast and precise. I immediately pulled it out after stabbing. Fresh blood splattered across the ground. With the second strike, I held the blade against the blonde guy's neck. Don't move, or I'll stick it in. The high-pitched, childish voice did nothing to diminish the danger. The blonde guy's insincerity gay. Blonde guy couldn't see my fancy. But he could feel the threat of the Grim Reaper. He immediately raised both hands, enduring the pain to beg for mercy. Don't kill me. I ordered him to get up. Stand up, and then forced him to walk toward his brothers. Only then did I lift my dark eyes to stare intently at the crowd of men. My voice rang out with a calm tone. All of you have killed before. As soon as these words were uttered, everyone present was jolted with shock. The racetrack staff immediately backed away from them, terrified that they would become the next targets of these cold-blooded killers. The group of thugs also cast aside their disguises, revealing their cruel and bloodthirsty expressions. You little brat, if you already know that, then you should understand that holding a hostage is useless, whether he lives or dies. We're still taking the Chin family's eldest daughter's life. For desperate outlaws like them, loyalty isn't nearly as important as money. I knew this even better than they did. Therefore, my capturing the blonde guy wasn't intended to threaten them at all. I slowly uttered one sentence: I've already called the police. Sure enough, the faces of the men opposite me instantly changed, their eyes filled with clear panic. I gave them a final deadline: you have 5 minutes. If you leave the mountain now, you might still have a chance to escape. All of them instinctively turned and bolted toward their cars. They had to run, they couldn't afford to get caught. They yanked open their car doors and piled inside, not doubting for a single second whether what I said was true or not. A normal person, knowing they were involved in murders, would definitely choose to call the cops. In the blink of an eye, every car turned around and fled for their lives. I quietly remained on the blonde guy's back, staring at their departing figures until they vanished. Once I was certain they wouldn't be coming back, I finally climbed down from his shoulders. I told the racetrack staff, capture him. Seeing that the blonde guy was injured and had collapsed on the ground, the staff finally dared to rush forward. At this point, Chin Muyue finally managed to pull herself up and walked over to me looking a bit tense, asking if I was injured. I shook my head. I'm fine. I used the grass by the road to wipe the dagger clean, folded it up, and put it back in my pocket. Chin Muyue, seeing how calm I was, couldn't help but swallow hard. She gave a forced laugh and said, luckily you noticed early and called the police. Otherwise, things would have really gone south. I didn't quite get what she meant, so I turned my head toward her and said, I didn't call the police. Chin Muyue froze, her jaw dropping as she pointed into the distance. Then back at the blonde guy. Then, them. I shrugged. I just bluffed them. This trick isn't exactly new. Otherwise, after so many years at the border, a kid like me wouldn't have survived peacefully. Until today. Later, Musharan arrived with her people. Chin Muyue saw they were all just staff members, and only then did she believe me. Chin Muyue. couldn't help but grumble to Mushuran. I'm not kidding. This brother of yours has some serious balls. Daring to lie right to a killer's face. Playing this game is way too intense. I'm still feeling it. Mushuran looked at the extinguished flames at the foot of the mountain, turned to glare at her and said, if we really called the police, how would you explain the dead people down there? If word of this got out, your racetrack would be closed down immediately. Game over. Kinmuyue thought for a moment, then nodded and said, you're right. I'll have my family handle this a bit and it'll be fine. Anyway, today was a real stroke of luck. Mushuran saw her sprawling lazily on a nearby rock and let out a scoff, walking over to smack the back of her head. Down there, you were acting like you didn't care about your life. So why are you acting like such a coward now that it's real? If it wasn't for my brother today, you would have met the Grim Reaper long ago. Kinmuyue took the hit without daring to get angry, because it was the truth. Truthfully only when reaching the brink of life and death. Did she realize that dying was actually that terrifying? It turns out her previous suicidal thoughts were all so incredibly ridiculous, clutching her aching neck with lingering fear in her heart. I won't be like that anymore. Then she looked over at the person sitting silently, watching the sky beside her, lowering her voice to say, today, thanks for saving me. If you want anything, just tell me. She habitually spoke up, wanting to use material things as a reward. I pulled my gaze back from the blue sky and white clouds, slightly shaking my head. You already bought me clothes and shoes today. Muyue was about to say those things weren't worth much. But when she turned around, she found the boy bowing his head, with extreme seriousness, using a tissue to wipe the dirt off his shoes. There was clearly still blood on his hands. Yet he didn't wipe that, he wiped those shoes instead. It was as if the gift she had given so casually was being treated like a precious treasure. A warm current flowed through her heart, making her feel that using money to measure the child in front of her was an insult. So she simply stood up, reaching out to ruffle the little guy's head. Being melted by the soft, fluffy feeling of that hair, her heart softened and she couldn't help but let out a soft laugh. Then in the future, I'll buy you even more beautiful clothes, okay? As soon as the words left her mouth, Mushuran, who was nearby, strode over. With a smack, she swatted the hand away and said, what happened to him being a bad kid? I warned you from the very beginning. Don't you dare eye my brother. Kinmuyue was stunned, remembering her look of disgust before getting in the car, and couldn't help but burst into laughter. I understand what you said now, but sorry. Once I've called him my brother, it's like spilled water. From now on, this boy is also my brother.